Welcome aboard, friends. You're now tuned into Dark Harry. We're super excited to share today's story with you. What if Harry opened the Chamber of Secrets and found Slytherin's true library? If you enjoy what we do here, the best way to support us is by liking, commenting, and subscribing. We read every comment. Ready? Let's go. Chapter 1, The Serpent's Secret. Harry shot upright in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. The same nightmare again, slithering through damp stone corridors, hissing words he understood but wished he didn't, the overwhelming sense of something ancient calling to him. He wiped sweat from his forehead and fumbled for his glasses on the nightstand. Bloody hell, he whispered, checking his watch. 3 a.m. The dormitory was filled with the familiar symphony of Ron's snoring and Neville's occasional mumbles. This was the 5th night in a row. The Chamber of Secrets, supposedly sealed forever after their second-year adventure, wouldn't leave him alone. The dreams were becoming more insistent, more detailed. Each night, he saw a different passage, a different entrance than the one in Myrtle's bathroom. Harry slipped out of bed and pulled his invisibility cloak from his trunk. He couldn't ignore it anymore. These weren't just dreams, they felt like summons. The castle corridors were silent save for the occasional creak of armor or snore of a portrait. Harry padded down staircases with practiced stealth, following the mental map imprinted by his dreams. Not toward the girls' bathroom this time, but deeper, toward a section of the dungeons he barely recognized. He paused at an unremarkable stone wall adorned with a small, barely noticeable serpentine carving. If someone wasn't looking for it specifically, they'd walk right past. Harry ran his fingers over the etching, feeling its cool surface pulse slightly beneath his touch. "Open," he hissed in Parseltongue, the sound still alien and unsettling coming from his own mouth. Nothing happened. Harry frowned, concentrating harder. The dreams had shown him more specific commands. What were they? "Reveal the Founder's true path," he tried, the sibilant sounds echoing softly against the stones. The wall remained solid. Harry leaned against it, frustrated. Maybe he was just sleepwalking through an elaborate wild goose chase conjured by his subconscious. Then he remembered something different. In the most recent dream, the command hadn't been demanding or forceful, but almost respectful. "I seek knowledge, not conquest," Harry whispered in Parseltongue. "I come to learn, Salazar, not to judge." The stone beneath his fingers warmed. Hairline fractures appeared in the wall, spreading outward in a spiderweb pattern from the serpent carving. The stones rearranged themselves, forming an archway that revealed a narrow, descending staircase. Harry hesitated only a moment before slipping through. The passage sealed itself behind him, plunging him into darkness. "Lumos," he muttered, his wand tip illuminating rough-hewn steps that spiraled downward. The air grew colder as he descended, carrying a scent of ancient parchment and something else, not the dank mildew he remembered from the chamber, but something almost like herbs and old leather. After what felt like hundreds of steps, the staircase opened into a small antechamber. 2 stone serpents flanked another doorway, their emerald eyes gleaming in his wand light. Harry approached cautiously. "I come seeking wisdom," he hissed, the phrase appearing in his mind as if planted there. The serpents uncoiled, slithering around the archway until they faced each other. Their jaws opened wide, revealing not fangs but small keyholes. "Great," Harry muttered. "Just what I need. A magic door that needs keys I don't have." He illuminated the chamber more fully, searching for anything that might help. The walls were bare except for a single inscription carved above the archway in an unfamiliar script. Not Latin or any modern language Harry recognized. "I wonder if Hermione could translate this," he mused, then froze as the script seemed to shimmer and transform before his eyes. "Knowledge is the key that unlocks all doors." "Right, very helpful," Harry grumbled. He pointed his wand at one of the keyholes. "Alohomora." Nothing happened. Harry approached the serpents again, studying them more carefully. Their emerald eyes seemed to track his movement. On impulse, he pressed the tip of his wand to one of the gems. Lumos Maxima, he whispered. Light flooded through the emerald, refracting and shooting across the chamber in a green beam that struck the opposite wall. A matching beam burst from the other serpent's eye after Harry repeated the spell, crossing the first beam at the center of the room. Where the beams intersected, a glittering object materialized. Harry reached out and grabbed it, a small silver key shaped like a coiled snake. One key, two locks, Harry muttered. He examined the key closer and noticed it had identical heads on both ends. Clever. He inserted the double-headed key into both locks simultaneously. The serpent's jaws clamped shut, metal teeth grinding as they twisted the key in unison. With a deep rumbling, the stone door slid open. Harry's jaw dropped. The Chamber of Secrets, or at least, a Chamber of Secrets, spread before him. But instead of the cavernous, statue-dominated space he remembered, this was a vast library. Circular in design, it stretched upward at least 3 stories, with bookshelves lining every wall. A spiral staircase wound around the perimeter, providing access to the upper levels. At the center stood a massive wooden table surrounded by high-backed chairs, covered in scrolls, open books, and what looked like abandoned research. Bloody hell, Harry whispered, echoing Ron's favorite phrase. This isn't the chamber. At least, not the same one. He stepped inside cautiously, half expecting the basilisk to lunge from the shadows. But the only movement came from small magical lights that activated as he entered, floating upward to illuminate the space with a warm glow. The room hummed with magic, old magic, but not dark or threatening. It felt like Hogwarts itself, ancient and powerful, but with purpose. Harry approached the central table. The scrolls and books lay open as if someone had just stepped away moments ago, yet a fine layer of dust covered everything. Some of the texts were in languages he didn't recognize, but others were in English, or what passed for English centuries ago. One journal caught his eye, bound in dark green leather with silver clasps. Harry carefully opened it, revealing handwritten notes in a sharp, angular script. The others grow increasingly wary of my research. Godric especially questions my methods, though he cannot argue with my results. If they will not allow me to teach the fullness of magical potential to all students, then I shall preserve my knowledge here, where only a worthy successor will find it. Harry's pulse quickened. This wasn't just any journal, it was Salazar Slytherin's personal diary. He flipped through more pages, skimming entries that detailed experimental spellwork, theories on magical inheritance, and heated disagreements with the other founders. It was nothing like the sanitized history taught in classes. This Slytherin wasn't simply the blood purity zealot from legend, he was complicated, brilliant, and often frustrated by the limitations his fellow founders tried to impose. One entry particularly caught Harry's attention: Godric accuses me of valuing blood over ability. He misunderstands, willfully I suspect. It is not purity of blood that matters, but potency of magic. Some Muggle-born students arrive with astonishing natural talent, more than many of our oldest families. What I seek is to understand why, to identify the source of magical power and cultivate it. Is it so wrong to wish to strengthen our kind? Harry sat heavily in one of the chairs, his worldview tilting sideways. Everything he'd been told about Slytherin, by Binns, by Dumbledore, by everyone, suddenly seemed incomplete at best, deliberately misleading at worst. This changes everything, he murmured, running his fingers over the aged parchment. He noticed another book on the table, this one bound in black leather with no markings. Opening it revealed not handwritten notes but a printed text with illustrations, a spell book, but unlike any in the Hogwarts library. The spells had no ministry classifications, no warnings about difficulty levels or age restrictions. They simply presented theory, methodology, and application. Harry flipped to a random page and found a variation of the shield charm he'd never encountered, one designed to absorb and redirect hostile magic rather than simply block it. The notes claimed it was more efficient and tactically advantageous than the standard Protego. Why aren't we learning this? Harry wondered aloud. He moved deeper into the library, discovering shelf after shelf of magical knowledge. Some sections contained what appeared to be standard magical subjects, transfiguration, charms, potions, but with content far more advanced than anything taught at Hogwarts. Other sections were dedicated to branches of magic he'd never heard of: magical architecture, mind arts beyond occlumency, elemental manipulation, ritual crafting. Harry pulled down a tome on defensive magic and flipped through it, growing increasingly confused and excited. The spells weren't dark or evil, they were just powerful, efficient, and taught with an approach that assumed the reader's intelligence rather than spoon-feeding basics. This isn't dark magic, Harry realized. It's just uncensored magic. He returned to Slytherin's journal, searching for explanations. More entries detailed Slytherin's growing frustration with what he saw as needless restrictions on magical education, another argument with Helga today over curriculum. She insists certain branches of magic are too dangerous for young minds, that we must protect students from themselves. I maintain that withholding knowledge doesn't protect, it weakens. Better to teach control than to breed ignorance and fear. And later, Rowena alone seems to understand my concerns, though even she balks at some of my methods. They speak of unity while forcing compromise that serves no one well. If we continue on this path, we will raise generations of witches and wizards who know only fragments of their potential, who fear their own power rather than mastering it. Harry checked his watch, he'd been reading for hours. Dawn would break soon, and his absence would be noticed. Reluctantly, he closed the journal and stood to leave, then hesitated. Could he just walk away from this discovery? On impulse, he grabbed Slytherin's journal and the unmarked spellbook. He needed to study them more carefully, to understand what he'd found before deciding what to do. As he lifted the journal, something happened. A soft golden glow emanated from the floor, spreading outward in concentric circles. Runes appeared briefly before fading, and Harry felt a subtle shift in the chamber's magic. Security wards, he realized with a sinking feeling. I've triggered something. Harry quickly tucked the books inside his robes and hurried toward the exit. The chamber remained calm, but his instincts screamed that he'd activated some kind of monitoring charm. Someone or something now knew the chamber had been entered. The door opened at his approach, and Harry raced back up the spiral staircase, his mind whirling with questions and implications. Who else knew about this place? Dumbledore? Voldemort? Had Tom Riddle found this library and corrupted its knowledge, or had he only discovered the outer chamber with the basilisk? Harry reached the dungeon wall, which opened at his approach without requiring a password. He slipped through, checking that the invisibility cloak still covered him completely, and began the careful journey back to Gryffindor Tower. He had almost reached the 7th floor when he froze, pressing himself against the wall. Footsteps approached, too light for Filch, too purposeful for a wandering student. Professor Blackthorn rounded the corner, wand illuminated. The defense against the dark arts teacher moved with alert precision, his sharp features tense with concentration. He paused near Harry, lifting his wand higher. Curious, Blackthorn murmured. The castle's old wards are restless tonight. Harry held his breath, not daring to move. Blackthorn was new this year, a former unspeakable, according to rumor, who'd taken the cursed data position after a distinguished career in magical research. His classes were challenging but fascinating, focusing on magical theory as much as practical application. Blackthorn turned slowly in place, his wand extended. Hominum revelio, he whispered. Harry felt a strange sensation wash over him, like a breeze passing through rather than around his body. The invisibility cloak should protect him from detection spells, at least, it always had before. Blackthorn frowned, staring directly at the spot where Harry stood. For a heart-stopping moment, Harry thought he'd been discovered. Then the professor shook his head slightly. Paranoia, Celius, he muttered to himself. The old wards trigger false alarms all the time. He lowered his wand and continued down the corridor, disappearing around the next corner. Harry exhaled silently, waiting until the footsteps faded completely before continuing his journey. Back in his dormitory, Harry stashed the books in his trunk beneath his invisibility cloak. The sky was beginning to lighten outside the tower windows. He collapsed onto his bed, mind racing despite his exhaustion. He'd just discovered something that could change everything he understood about Hogwarts, about Slytherin, about magic itself. But his instincts warned him to be cautious about who he told. Not even Dumbledore had mentioned the existence of this secret library, either he didn't know about it, or he'd chosen to keep it hidden. Harry's last thought before drifting into uneasy sleep was that for the first time, he possessed knowledge that even Hermione couldn't find in any approved school book. Harry! Harry! He jolted awake to find Ron standing over him, already dressed in his school robes. "Blimey, mate, I've been trying to wake you for 5 minutes. We're going to miss breakfast if you don't get moving." Harry fumbled for his glasses. "What time is it?" "Nearly 8:30. You look awful." "Another nightmare?" "Something like that," Harry mumbled, dragging himself out of bed. His adventure in the hidden chamber felt almost dreamlike in the morning light, but the ache in his legs from climbing all those stairs was very real. "Was it, a Voldemort thing?" Ron asked, lowering his voice despite the empty dormitory. Harry shook his head. "No, just regular nightmares. Sorry for oversleeping." He dressed quickly, his mind churning with questions about what he'd discovered. Should he tell Ron and Hermione? Normally, he wouldn't hesitate to share something this important with his best friends, but something held him back. He needed to understand more first, to read Slytherin's journal more carefully before involving others. In the Great Hall, Hermione had saved them seats and was already reviewing notes for their first class. "There you are. I was beginning to think you'd both gone back to bed." She glanced up from her parchment, her expression shifting to concern as she looked at Harry. "Are you all right? You look exhausted." "Fine," Harry said, reaching for a piece of toast. "Just didn't sleep well." He was having nightmares again, Ron supplied, piling sausages onto his plate. Hermione frowned. "About Voldemort?" "No, nothing like that," Harry said quickly. "Just regular dreams. Nothing important." Hermione looked unconvinced but didn't press further. "Well, you should both finish eating quickly. We have defense against the dark arts first thing, and you know how Professor Blackthorn feels about tardiness." At the mention of Blackthorn, Harry's fork froze halfway to his mouth. He remembered the professor's late-night patrol and his strange comment about the castle's wards. Had he somehow sensed the opening of Slytherin's chamber? "Harry?" Hermione prompted. "Are you sure you're all right?" "Yeah, just thinking about the essay we need to turn in." He forced himself to eat normally, though his appetite had vanished. As they headed to defense class, Harry found himself studying Professor Blackthorn with new interest. The man had been an enigma since arriving at Hogwarts. Unlike previous data teachers who either flaunted their expertise, Lockhart, or demonstrated it practically, Lupin, Blackthorn taught with a scholarly detachment that somehow commanded respect. His background in the Department of Mysteries gave him an air of secrecy that even Dumbledore seemed to respect. Today, Blackthorn looked slightly tired, as if he too had been up late wandering the castle. His piercing gaze swept over the class as students settled into their seats. "Your essays on the ethical limitations of defensive magic, please," he said without preamble, flicking his wand to summon the parchments from their desks. "Today we'll be discussing a concept many of you will find challenging, the intersection of intent and effect in spellcasting." Harry tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting to the hidden library and its revelations. Blackthorn's lecture, ironically, touched on topics similar to those in Slytherin's journal, the idea that magic itself wasn't inherently dark or light, but shaped by the caster's intent and understanding. "Mr. Potter," Blackthorn said suddenly, snapping Harry's attention back to class. "You seem particularly contemplative today. Perhaps you'd care to share your thoughts on whether a spell's classification as dark should be determined by its effect, its history, or some other criteria? Put on the spot, Harry scrambled for an answer. But as he opened his mouth, phrases from Slytherin's journal flashed through his mind. I think maybe we focus too much on labeling magic as dark or light, Harry said slowly, surprising himself. What matters is understanding the magic fully, its purpose, its consequences, how to control it. Fear of magic we don't understand leads to either avoiding it completely or misusing it dangerously. The classroom fell silent. Even Hermione looked startled by his response. Blackthorn's eyebrows rose slightly, his head tilting as he studied Harry with new interest. An unexpectedly nuanced perspective, Mr. Potter. 5 points to Gryffindor. He paused, his gaze lingering on Harry. I wonder, though, does understanding a dangerous thing make it less dangerous, or merely give us the illusion of safety? The question hung in the air, directed at the class but seemingly meant for Harry specifically. Before he could respond, Blackthorn continued his lecture, but Harry caught the professor glancing his way several times with a thoughtful expression. After class, as students filed out, Blackthorn called, Mr. Potter, a moment please. Harry tensed but approached the desk, aware of Ron and Hermione hovering uncertainly by the door. I'll catch up, he told them, trying to sound casual. When they'd gone, Blackthorn regarded Harry silently for a moment. Your response today surprised me, Potter. It's not often a fifth-year student challenges the orthodox classification system that the Ministry has spent centuries establishing. Harry shifted uncomfortably. I just said what came to mind, Professor. Indeed. Blackthorn tapped his fingers on the desk. Your essay, while competently written, didn't hint at such a perspective. I wonder what inspired this sudden philosophical depth. Just, thinking about things differently lately, Harry said vaguely. Blackthorn nodded slowly. The hallmark of true intellectual growth is questioning what we've been taught to accept without evidence. He paused, his piercing gaze unsettling. Hogwarts contains many secrets, Mr. Potter. Some are meant to be discovered. Others, well, not everything hidden is meant to be found by everyone. Harry's heart pounded. Did Blackthorn know about the chamber? Was this a warning or a test? I'm not sure what you mean, Professor. Blackthorn's expression remained unreadable. Simply that curiosity is both a virtue and a hazard, especially in a castle as ancient and magical as this one. The founders left many legacies behind, some obvious, others less so. He straightened, his tone shifting to dismissal. That's all, Potter. Do consider expanding on your perspective in your next essay. It's refreshing to encounter original thinking. Harry nodded and left quickly, his mind racing. That wasn't a casual conversation, Blackthorn was probing, fishing for confirmation of something he suspected. But how much did he actually know? Outside, Ron and Hermione waited impatiently. What was that about? Ron asked as they headed toward Transfiguration. He was impressed with my answer in class, Harry said, which was true enough. Wanted to know where I got the idea from. It was an interesting perspective, Hermione admitted. Not one I expected from you, honestly. It sounded almost like something from advanced magical theory, which isn't even taught until 7th year. Harry shrugged, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. Just been thinking about things differently lately. Well, be careful around Blackthorn, Ron muttered. Fred and George reckon he can read minds. Said they felt like he was sorting through their thoughts when they tried to explain why their homework was late. That's ridiculous, Hermione scoffed. Legilimency is heavily regulated. A professor wouldn't use it on students. Harry wasn't so sure. There had been something probing about Blackthorn's gaze that made him grateful for all the occlumency training he'd endured with Snape last year after Voldemort's return. Those lessons had been brutal but necessary, given Voldemort's connection to his mind. He wasn't skilled enough to completely block a determined Legilimens, but he could sense an intrusion and shield his most immediate thoughts. Throughout the day, Harry found it increasingly difficult to concentrate on classes. His mind kept returning to the chamber and its contents. By evening, he was desperate to examine the books he'd taken, to confirm that his discovery was real and not some elaborate dream. After dinner, he made an excuse about needing to work on an essay alone and retreated to his dormitory while Ron and Hermione remained in the common room. The room was blessedly empty, allowing Harry to retrieve Slytherin's journal from his trunk. The book was real, aged green leather, silver clasps, the same angular handwriting he remembered. Harry settled onto his bed, drawing the curtains and casting a quick, muffliato spell he'd learned from Slytherin's book to ensure privacy. He began reading methodically from the beginning, discovering that the journal covered approximately 3 years during the early days of Hogwarts. Slytherin's initial entries were enthusiastic, filled with plans for magical education and excitement about working with the other founders. But gradually, tensions emerged. We cannot agree on the most fundamental question: who deserves magical education? Godric would teach any child showing the slightest spark, regardless of background or aptitude. Rowena wishes to select based solely on intelligence and academic potential. Helga, kind-hearted to a fault, believes everyone deserves the same chance. And I am painted as the villain for suggesting that magical strength and heritage should both be considered. Not all Muggle-born children come from families who will accept their nature. Many are in danger in their homes, or pose a risk of exposure to our world. And yes, those from magical lineages often bring stronger innate connections to certain types of magic. This is observable fact, not prejudice. Harry frowned, trying to reconcile this reasoning with the monstrous legacy attributed to Slytherin. The founder seemed less concerned with blood purity for its own sake and more worried about practical considerations of safety and magical potential. Further entries revealed deeper philosophical disagreements, another heated debate with Godric today. He accuses me of hiding knowledge, of teaching my students spells and techniques I don't share with the others. He is not wrong. Some magic requires a certain temperament to master safely, the ability to control one's emotions, to understand power without being seduced by it. Not all students possess this discipline, regardless of their house. I asked him if he teaches dueling the same way to all students, regardless of their physical capabilities or temperament. Of course he doesn't, he adapts his teaching to each student's strengths. Why should other magic be different? He called me secretive and elitist. I called him recklessly democratic. We parted angry, again. Harry read until his eyes grew heavy, absorbing Slytherin's perspective on everything from magical theory to student selection to the growing rifts between the founders. It was nothing like the simplistic version taught in History of Magic, where Slytherin was portrayed as a one-dimensional bigot who valued only pure blood. This Slytherin was complex, brilliant, sometimes arrogant, often frustrated by compromise, but genuinely concerned with preserving and advancing magical knowledge. His views on Muggleborns were more nuanced than Harry had been led to believe. He didn't hate them categorically but worried about the dangers they faced from their own families and the risks they posed to magical secrecy in an era when witch-burning was common. Harry turned to the final pages, where the entries grew increasingly bitter. It has come to this, then. After all our dreams of unity, after building this castle stone by stone with our combined magic, they would have me leave. Or rather, they would have me stay but surrender my principles entirely. Godric no longer speaks to me except in front of students, maintaining the illusion of founder harmony. Helga looks at me with disappointment, as if I have betrayed some sacred trust. Only Rowena still engages with my ideas, though even she cannot fully support my methods. So be it. I will depart as they wish, but I leave behind more than they know. The chamber holds not just protection for the school in times of dire need, but the accumulated knowledge they fear to teach. Perhaps in time, a worthy heir will discover it, someone who values magical knowledge for its own sake, not for the arbitrary distinctions of acceptable and forbidden that grow more rigid with each passing year. My basilisk will guard against any unworthy intruders, responding only to Parseltongue, a rare gift that typically manifests in my bloodline but occasionally appears in others with particularly strong magical connections. Should a worthy successor speak the tongue, they will find not just the chamber's outer sanctum but the hidden repository of knowledge beneath. This is my true legacy to Hogwarts, not division, as they will no doubt claim, but preservation of magical knowledge in its fullest form, uncensored and complete. Harry closed the journal, his mind reeling. Slytherin had created the chamber with dual purposes, housing the basilisk as protection against enemies, but also preserving magical knowledge he believed was being suppressed by the other founders. And Harry, through his Parseltongue ability, had stumbled upon the part of that legacy that even Tom Riddle apparently never found, or if he had chosen not to share with the world. The implications were staggering. If what Slytherin wrote was true, the entire history of Hogwarts had been sanitized. The portrait of Slytherin as merely a blood purist was incomplete at best, deliberately misleading at worst. And the knowledge hidden in that chamber, knowledge deemed too dangerous or controversial by the other founders, had remained hidden for 1,000 years. Harry turned his attention to the unmarked spellbook he'd also taken. This wasn't a journal but a comprehensive text on defensive and offensive magic, written in a clear instructional style. The spells ranged from simple to complex, but all were explained thoroughly, with magical theory underpinning each technique. One spell caught Harry's eye, a modified stunning charm designed to penetrate standard shield charms by fragmenting into multiple energy points upon contact with a barrier. The notes indicated it was particularly effective against opponents who relied on stationary defense rather than mobility. This could actually work, Harry murmured, studying the wand movement. It was more complex than a standard stupefy, requiring a twist and spiral motion rather than a simple jab. Harry glanced around the empty dormitory, then carefully practiced the movement without actually casting. The motion felt awkward at first, but after several repetitions began to flow more naturally. Stupefy fractum, he whispered, completing the movement with his wand pointed at his pillow. To his shock, a red bolt shot from his wand, not the solid beam of a standard stunning spell, but something that seemed to shimmer with internal movement, like water flowing within a transparent tube. It struck the pillow, which burst into feathers that flew in all directions before freezing midair. Bloody hell! Harry gasped, then quickly cast Finite Incantatem to stop the spell before anyone came to investigate the noise. The feathers fell harmlessly onto his bed. Harry stared at his wand in disbelief. He hadn't intended to actually cast the spell, he'd barely put any power behind the words. Yet the result had been dramatically more powerful than a standard stunning spell, which would have simply made the pillow jump slightly. "What have I found?" he whispered to himself. The door to the dormitory opened suddenly, and Harry quickly shoved the books under his blankets. Neville entered, looking surprised to find Harry there. "Oh, hi Harry. Ron said you were working on an essay in the library." "Finished early," Harry said, trying to look casual while surrounded by pillow feathers. "Just, had a little accident with my pillow." Neville nodded, apparently finding nothing unusual about Harry destroying bedding. "Happens to me all the time. Usually when I'm trying to practice herbology charms." He rummaged in his trunk, found whatever he was looking for, and left again. Harry exhaled in relief, then cast a quick reparo on his pillow, watching as the feathers gathered themselves and reformed into their proper shape. He needed a safer place to practice these spells and study the books, somewhere private where accidents wouldn't attract attention. The room of requirement would be perfect, but getting there regularly without arousing Ron and Hermione's suspicion would be tricky. And there was the larger question, should he tell his friends about his discovery? Hermione would be fascinated by the historical revelations and new magical knowledge, but she'd also insist on telling Dumbledore. Ron might be more hesitant, given his family's long-standing distrust of anything Slytherin-related. Harry tucked the books back into his trunk, securing them beneath his invisibility cloak. He needed time to think, to understand more of what he'd found before involving others. Whatever Salazar Slytherin's true intentions had been in creating his secret library, Harry had become its latest finder. The knowledge it contained could change everything, his understanding of magic, of Hogwarts history, perhaps even of his own unusual connection to Slytherin's legacy through his Parseltongue ability. For now, though, he needed sleep. Tomorrow, he'd find a way to return to the chamber and explore more thoroughly. And somehow, he needed to avoid Blackthorn's increasingly suspicious attention. Harry woke early the next morning, his mind clearer after a full night's sleep. The enormity of his discovery still weighed on him, but now he had the beginnings of a plan. He would return to the chamber tonight to explore further, and in the meantime, he would test a few of the simpler spells from Slytherin's book to verify their effectiveness. At breakfast, he joined Ron and Hermione with forced casualness. "You disappeared early last night," Hermione commented, buttering her toast. "Did you finish that essay for McGonagall?" "Not exactly," Harry admitted. "Got distracted with some other reading." Ron snorted. "Voluntary reading? Who are you and what have you done with Harry Potter?" Harry managed a smile. "Just something I found that looked interesting. Actually, I was thinking we should use the DA meeting today to work on some advanced shield charms." After Umbridge's disastrous appointment as High Inquisitor, they'd formed Dumbledore's Army, a secret student group practicing real defense magic away from her theoretical-only curriculum. Harry had taken the role of teacher, drawing on his practical experience. Hermione looked intrigued. "What kind of advanced shields?" "I've read about variations, but they're not in our curriculum until at least 6th year. Just some techniques I came across," Harry said vaguely. "Thought they might be useful, especially for the older students." "Sounds good to me," Ron said. "Anything that helps us actually defend ourselves is better than Umbridge's useless classes." As they headed to their first lesson, Harry's thoughts drifted to the DA meeting scheduled for that afternoon. It would be the perfect opportunity to test one of the defensive techniques from Slytherin's book, not the most advanced or obvious, but something practical that would genuinely help his fellow students. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. In charms, Harry barely paid attention as they practiced silencing charms, his mind occupied with the more sophisticated magic he'd glimpsed in Slytherin's texts. In Transfiguration, McGonagall called on him twice before he noticed, earning a disapproving look and a reminder to keep his mind in the present classroom, not wherever it had wandered off to. Finally, the afternoon arrived, and with it, the DA meeting in the room of requirement. Students from Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, and Ravenclaw filtered in, chatting excitedly until Harry called for their attention. "Today we're going to work on something new," he announced. "Shield charms are essential, but the standard Protego has limitations. It blocks spells from one direction, requires constant focus, and drains your energy the longer you maintain it." He paced before the group, surprised at how naturally the explanation came to him. "There's a variation called Protego Orbis that creates a spherical shield around you instead of a flat barrier. It requires more initial power but less maintenance, and protects from all directions." Hermione's hand shot up. "That's not in the standard book of spells, even for Newt level." "No, it's not," Harry agreed. "But it's dead useful in a real fight when you might be surrounded or attacked from behind." "Where did you learn it?" she persisted. Harry had anticipated this question. "From Sirius, last summer. He showed me a few advanced defensive spells the Aurors use." The lie came easily, rationalized by the genuine need for these students to learn effective defense. Hermione seemed satisfied with the explanation, though she gave him a slightly curious look. "The wand movement is different from a standard Protego," Harry continued, demonstrating a circular motion that rose and fell like a wave. "You need to visualize the shield forming around you completely, not just in front. The incantation is Protego Orbis, with emphasis on the Oarbis." He demonstrated, casting the spell with confidence born from his late-night reading. A shimmering bubble of translucent light expanded outward from his wand, enclosing him completely in a protective sphere. Stupefied, he invited Ron, who obligingly fired a stunning spell that bounced off the shield with a resonant gong-like sound. Impressed murmurs spread through the room. Harry released the shield and had students pair up to practice, moving among them to correct technique and offer guidance. The spell was challenging, more so than the regular shield charm, but by the end of the session, several students had managed partial spheres, and Hermione, of course, had produced a complete one. That was brilliant, Harry. Neville exclaimed as they packed up. Much more useful than anything Umbridge has taught us. Others nodded in agreement, filing out in small groups to avoid drawing attention. Hermione lingered behind with Ron, helping Harry restore the room to its original state. That really was impressive magic, Harry, she said, studying him with an analytical expression he knew all too well. Are you sure Sirius taught you that? It's not standard Auror training from what I've read. Since when has Sirius ever stuck to standard anything? Harry deflected. He said he learned it during the First War against Voldemort, when ambushes were common. Hermione seemed to accept this explanation, though not entirely without reservation. Well, it's excellent magic regardless. You taught it really well too. I've never seen you so confident explaining magical theory before. Yeah, mate, Ron added. You sounded almost like a professor. It was weird. Harry forced a laugh. Must be all those defense lessons with the DA. Getting practice explaining things. They headed back to Gryffindor Tower together, Harry fielding more questions about advanced shield variations with carefully constructed half-truths. The knowledge from just one night's reading of Slytherin's texts had already expanded his magical understanding dramatically. What else might he learn with more time? That night, after his roommates had fallen asleep, Harry slipped out again under his invisibility cloak. The journey to the hidden entrance seemed easier this time, his feet finding the path almost instinctively. The wall opened at his Parseltongue command without resistance, as if welcoming him back. The descent into the chamber felt less ominous now, more like entering a forgotten sanctuary than a forbidden dungeon. When he reached the library, the magical lights activated immediately, brighter than before, illuminating the vast collection of books and scrolls. Harry moved purposefully to a different section tonight, drawn to a shelf labeled, Practical Applications of Magical Theory. He selected a thick volume bound in blue leather, its title embossed in silver, The Fundamental Patterns of Spellcasting. Opening it revealed diagrams of wand movements paired with explanations of why specific motions channeled magic more effectively for different purposes. It wasn't just instructions to memorize but explanations of the underlying principles, why a swish gathered ambient magic while a flick directed it, how spiral motions contained energy while linear ones projected it. This is how spells are created, Harry realized. Not just discovered or memorized, but deliberately crafted based on magical principles. He spent hours absorbing the text, occasionally practicing motions with his wand. The book explained that most modern spellcasting relied on simplified movements that sacrificed power for accessibility, making magic easier to learn but less efficient to cast. Another shelf caught his attention, labeled simply Parseltongue. Harry approached it eagerly, finding a collection of slim volumes written entirely in the Serpent language. These weren't journals but instructional texts, spells and magical techniques that could only be performed by Parselmouths. Harry pulled one down, surprised to find he could read the strange script as easily as English when he focused on it as a snake language. The text described how Parseltongue could be used not just for communication with serpents but as a magical language itself, capable of casting spells with unusual properties, particularly those involving protection, healing, and revealing hidden things. The simplest example was a revealing spell called Serpens Revelio, that, when spoken in Parseltongue, would uncover hidden magical objects or passages with a connection to Slytherin's magic. Unlike standard revealing charms, it could penetrate most concealment enchantments by exploiting the unique magical resonance of Parseltongue itself. Harry practiced the pronunciation carefully, then cast, Serpens Revelio, in a sibilant hiss. A pulse of green-gold light spread from his wand, washing over the library. Several books on distant shelves briefly glowed in response, as did an unremarkable section of the stone floor near the central table. Curious, Harry approached the spot on the floor. Close inspection revealed a subtle serpentine pattern etched into the stone, nearly invisible unless you knew to look for it. On impulse, he pressed his hand to the pattern and hissed, "Open." The stone shifted, revealing a small compartment containing a flat wooden box. Harry lifted it carefully and placed it on the table. No lock secured it, but when he tried to open it, the lid remained firmly shut. Open to the worthy air, Harry tried in Parseltongue. The box remained closed. Harry studied it more carefully, noticing tiny serpents carved around its edges. They didn't appear to be mere decorations but seemed to form a sentence when viewed in sequence. Knowledge demands sacrifice, wisdom requires blood, he translated slowly. The implication was clear, if disturbing. A blood lock, magic that required the sacrifice of the opener's blood to activate. Such magic was classified as dark by modern standards, associated with ancient family protections and darker rituals. Harry hesitated. Everything he'd been taught warned against blood magic as inherently corrupting. Yet Slytherin's journal had challenged many such absolutes, suggesting that intent and understanding mattered more than arbitrary classifications. After a long moment of consideration, Harry made his decision. He picked up a nearby quill, pricked his finger on its sharp tip, and let a single drop of blood fall onto the box's lid. The effect was immediate. The blood droplet seemed to sink into the wood, which rippled like water. The serpent carvings animated briefly, slithering around the perimeter before returning to their original positions. With a soft click, the lid unlocked. Harry opened it slowly, finding a single object inside, a ring of tarnished silver, set with a small emerald. It looked ancient but remarkably well preserved, sized for a man's hand rather than ornamental wear. When Harry picked it up, he felt a subtle pulse of magic. Not threatening or invasive, but questioning, as if the ring itself was assessing him. After a moment, the tarnish began to fade, the silver brightening until it gleamed in the chamber's magical light. Harry examined it more carefully, noticing tiny runes inscribed along the band. He couldn't read them directly, but somehow understood their meaning: knowledge protected, wisdom preserved, magic renewed. Was it safe to wear? Harry couldn't be certain, but his instinct suggested this wasn't a cursed object meant to harm. It felt like a key of sorts, or perhaps a symbol of acceptance. After another moment's hesitation, Harry slipped the ring onto the middle finger of his right hand. It adjusted itself immediately to fit perfectly, the emerald glowing briefly before settling into a subtle shimmer. The effect wasn't dramatic but unmistakable. Harry's magical awareness expanded. He could sense the wards and enchantments layered throughout the chamber more clearly, could feel the magical signatures of different books and artifacts around him. The sensation wasn't overwhelming but clarifying, like putting on glasses after struggling with blurry vision. Slytherin's ring, Harry murmured. Or at least, a ring he made for those he deemed worthy to access his knowledge. He turned back to the Parseltongue texts, finding that with the ring, the script seemed even clearer, the magical theories more immediately comprehensible. He spent another hour studying various techniques before reluctantly acknowledging the need to return before dawn. As Harry prepared to leave, he noticed a leather-bound journal different from Slytherin's personal diary, this one newer, the leather less aged, the pages less yellowed. Opening it revealed handwriting he didn't recognize, dating from the early 1940s. "I've finally found it, Slytherin's true chamber, not just the outer sanctum with its guardian beast. The old fool Dip-Pet suspects nothing, and Dumbledore's suspicions remain just that, suspicions without proof. The knowledge here is beyond anything taught at Hogwarts. Magic in its purest form, uncorrupted by ministry classifications and modern cowardice. Slytherin was right to hide it from the unworthy. With what I've learned here, no one will ever dismiss me again. The Muggle-raised orphan Tom Riddle will soon be forgotten, replaced by an identity of my own making, one that will command respect and fear in equal measure." Harry nearly dropped the journal in shock. This was Tom Riddle's diary, not the Horcrux he'd destroyed in his second year, but an actual record of Riddle's discoveries in the chamber. Voldemort had found this place after all. But something didn't add up. If Riddle had accessed all this knowledge, why had he left it intact? Why not take the books, or destroy them to prevent others from following his path? Harry flipped through more entries, finding his answer: the chamber's protections are more clever than I initially realized. Books cannot be removed permanently, they return to their shelves within hours unless the reader has been specifically recognized by Slytherin's enchantments as worthy. Even copying spells fail, producing only gibberish on parchment. I've spent weeks studying here, but time grows short. Dumbledore watches me too closely, and graduation approaches. I must memorize what I can, especially the rituals that will serve my greater purpose. The basilisk remains my most useful discovery, a weapon none can counter, loyal only to me. The creature will remain in the outer chamber, guarding this knowledge until I return as something greater than the student who departs. The final entry was dated just before Hogwarts summer holiday in 1945, my time at Hogwarts ends, but my true work begins. What I've learned here has shown me possibilities beyond the pathetic limitations taught by these professors. Immortality, power, mastery over death itself, all within my grasp with the right applications of what Slytherin preserved. I seal the outer chamber behind me. The basilisk will slumber until called again. Should anyone else discover this place, the creature will ensure they never share what they find. Slytherin's knowledge serves my legacy now. When I return to claim this castle, as I surely will, it shall be as Lord Voldemort, a name already whispered with fear by those who've glimpsed what I might become. Harry closed the journal with shaking hands. Riddle had found the library but hadn't understood its full significance. He'd seen it merely as a source of power, a means to his own dark ambitions, not as the preservation of magical knowledge Slytherin had intended. And he'd left the basilisk specifically to kill anyone else who found their way in, a contingency that had nearly succeeded when Ginny Weasley was possessed by his Horcrux diary. But I killed the basilisk, Harry murmured. And now the chamber is unguarded. He glanced at the ring on his finger, wondering if Riddle had discovered it as well. The journal made no mention of it, suggesting either that Riddle hadn't found it or hadn't been deemed worthy to unlock its secrets. Harry carefully returned Riddle's journal to its shelf, disturbed by this connection but also reassured by the differences in their experiences. Where Riddle had seen weapons and power, Harry saw knowledge and understanding. Where Riddle had sought to control and destroy, Harry wanted to learn and protect. With one last look at the vast collection of books, Harry reluctantly made his way back to the exit. The castle would be waking soon, and questions would arise if he wasn't in his bed. As he climbed the spiral staircase, a new determination formed in his mind. He would master what Slytherin had preserved, not for power over others, but for knowledge itself, and for the protection of those he cared about. Voldemort had twisted this legacy once, Harry wouldn't allow it to be corrupted again. But first, he needed to understand more, about the chamber, about Slytherin's true intentions, and about the ring that now marked him as an heir to this hidden knowledge. The next morning, Harry awoke with a clearer sense of purpose. The ring remained on his finger, though he'd considered removing it before sleep. Something told him it shouldn't be separated from him unnecessarily. A quick charm from Slytherin's books, a simple disillusionment variant specifically for magical objects, had rendered it invisible to others, though Harry could still see and feel it. At breakfast, he found himself noticing subtle magical currents he'd never perceived before, the enchantment on the ceiling that reflected the sky outside, the charms that kept the food warm, even the residual magic clinging to students who had recently cast spells. It wasn't overwhelming but rather like discovering a new sense that had always been dormant. "Harry, are you even listening?" Hermione's voice broke through his observations. "Sorry, what?" She sighed in exasperation. "I was asking if you wanted to work on Umbridge's essay together in the library this afternoon. You've been distracted all morning." "Oh, right. Actually, I've got some other research I want to do." "Research?" Ron looked up from his breakfast, eyebrows raised. "Voluntary research? Again? Are you feeling all right, mate?" Harry shrugged. "Just something I'm curious about. History of magic stuff." "Now I know you're ill," Ron declared. "Voluntarily researching the most boring subject at Hogwarts." "It's not boring if you find the right sources," Harry said, then immediately regretted it when Hermione's eyes lit up with scholarly interest. "What sources have you found?" I've read most of the history section in the library, and while there are some fascinating volumes on goblin rebellions and the founding of Hogwarts, they're hardly what I'd call exciting reading. Just some old journals, Harry said vaguely. Nothing special. Hermione looked ready to press further when their attention was diverted by the arrival of the morning mail. As owls swooped through the great hall delivering packages and letters, Harry noticed Professor Blackthorne watching him intently from the staff table. When their eyes met, the professor didn't look away but instead raised his goblet slightly in what almost seemed like a salute. "Blackthorne's staring at you again," Ron muttered. "Gives me the creeps, the way he watches people." "He's just observant," Hermione said. "All the former unspeakables are like that, apparently. My father's cousin worked with one at the ministry, said they notice everything." Harry broke the eye contact first, uncomfortable with Blackthorne's scrutiny. The professor's interest had definitely intensified since yesterday's class. Had he somehow sensed Harry's connection to the chamber, or was it merely academic interest in a student suddenly showing unexpected magical insight? After breakfast, they headed to potions, where Snape was in a particularly foul mood. As they prepared ingredients for a strengthening solution, Harry found himself reading the instructions with new understanding. The ring seemed to enhance his perception of not just active magic but potential magical interactions. He could almost see how the salamander blood would react with the powdered griffin claw before he added them. Working on instinct, Harry adjusted his technique slightly, crushing rather than chopping his valerian roots after noticing the different magical resonance the two methods produced in the plant's fibers. "Potter," Snape's cold voice came from directly behind him. "What do you think you're doing?" Harry froze, his mortar and pestle mid-grind. "Preparing the valerian, sir. The instructions clearly state to chop the roots." "Has your celebrity status now extended to believing yourself above following basic directions?" "I just thought, a novel experience for you, I'm sure," Snape cut in. 5 points from Gryffindor for deliberately ignoring instructions. He moved to vanish Harry's work, but paused, frowning at the perfectly crushed paste. Against his will, Snape seemed almost impressed by the consistency Harry had achieved. Nevertheless, Snape continued after a moment, "Continue with your variation. We shall see if your unprecedented attention to detail yields anything but the usual disaster." As Snape swept away, Ron gave Harry a sympathetic grimace. "Bad luck, mate. Though I've never seen Snape actually stop himself from vanishing your potion before." "That's practically a compliment from him." "Yeah," Harry agreed absently, already returning to his work with newfound focus. By the end of class, Harry's potion had achieved the exact shade of turquoise described in their textbook, something he'd never accomplished before. Even Snape could find no fault with the result, though he merely nodded curtly rather than offer any acknowledgement of its quality. As they packed up their equipment, Hermione looked both impressed and suspicious. "How did you know to crush the valerian instead of chopping it?" "That technique isn't in our book." "Just seemed to make sense," Harry said with forced casualness. "The roots were particularly fibrous today. Crushing releases more of the essential oils." Hermione stared at him. "That's exactly right, actually. But how did you know that? You've never shown that kind of intuitive understanding of potions before." "Maybe I'm finally paying attention after 5 years," Harry suggested, desperate to change the subject. "Come on, we'll be late for charms." Throughout the day, Harry found himself noticing subtle improvements in his spellcasting. Charms came more easily, transfigurations more precisely. The ring wasn't amplifying his raw power but rather his understanding and control, allowing him to use his existing magic more efficiently. During a free period that afternoon, Harry slipped away to the room of requirement, needing privacy to practice some of the techniques he'd read about. The room configured itself to his needs, spacious, with practice dummies, bookshelves, and a comfortable reading area. Harry removed 3 books he'd borrowed from Slytherin's library, which he discovered would indeed return to their shelves if left outside the chamber for too long. The ring, however, seemed to delay this effect, giving him more time to study them elsewhere. He began with practical exercises from The Fundamental Patterns of Spellcasting, focusing on the underlying principles rather than specific incantations. According to Slytherin's texts, most wizards learned magic backward, memorizing specific spells without understanding the fundamental patterns that made all spellcasting possible. One exercise involved casting a simple lumos, then systematically altering the wand movement while maintaining the same incantation and intent. Harry discovered that a spiral motion created a floating ball of light that detached from his wand, while a sweeping arc produced a beam that illuminated a specific area more intensely. It's like learning the grammar of magic instead of just memorizing phrases, Harry realized. He practiced for hours, losing track of time as he explored variations of familiar spells. The disarming charm, his signature spell, proved particularly adaptable. By modifying the wand motion slightly and focusing his intent differently, he could disarm multiple opponents simultaneously, or disarm with such precision that the target's wand flew directly into his own hand rather than arcing through the air. When Harry finally checked his watch, he was shocked to discover he'd missed dinner entirely. Exhausted but exhilarated, he gathered his books and headed back to Gryffindor Tower, his mind buzzing with new possibilities. The common room was crowded when he arrived, students chatting and working on homework. Ron and Hermione spotted him immediately and waved him over to their corner. "Where have you been?" Hermione demanded. "We looked everywhere for you." Lost track of time in the library, Harry lied, dropping into an armchair. "Did I miss anything important?" "Besides food, you mean?" Ron asked. "Umbridge announced she'll be inspecting all student groups and clubs. Reckon that includes the DA?" "Definitely," Harry said grimly. "We'll need to be more careful about meetings." "That's not all," Hermione lowered her voice. Ginny overheard Malfoy bragging to Crabbe and Goyle about some special assignment from his father. Something about ancient power hidden in Hogwarts that would put Potter in his place once and for all. Harry's blood ran cold. Did he mention what or where? No details, just boasting. But it sounds like the Malfoys might be looking for something hidden in the castle. Could they know about Slytherin's chamber? About the library? Lucius Malfoy had given Tom Riddle's diary to Ginny 3 years ago, clearly knowing its connection to the Chamber of Secrets. But did he know about the hidden library beneath? "We should keep an eye on Malfoy," Harry said. "See if he's searching for anything specific." "Already ahead of you," Ron replied. Fred and George agreed to have some of their experimental extendable ears ready by tomorrow. "We can monitor the Slytherin common room entrance." Harry nodded, but his mind was racing. If the Malfoys were indeed searching for Slytherin's library, they might have family knowledge about it passed down through generations of Slytherin alumni. He needed to return to the chamber tonight, to secure it against potential intrusion. After finishing homework with Ron and Hermione, completing his own assignments with unusual speed and clarity thanks to his enhanced understanding, Harry waited until his dormitory mates were asleep before slipping out again under his invisibility cloak. The journey to the chamber was becoming familiar now, his feet finding the path almost automatically. As he approached the serpent-marked wall in the dungeons, however, Harry slowed. His enhanced magical senses detected something different, traces of recent magic, like invisible footprints left behind by someone who had stood in this very spot not long ago. Someone else had been here, attempting to access the entrance. Harry placed his hand on the wall, concentrating on the magical residue. The ring on his finger warmed slightly, enhancing his perception. The magical signature felt probing but frustrated. Someone had tried multiple spells to reveal the entrance but failed. With greater caution now, Harry whispered the Parseltongue phrase that opened the wall. The passage appeared as before, and he slipped inside quickly, letting it seal behind him. As he descended the spiral staircase, Harry cast detection spells he'd learned from Slytherin's books, more sophisticated versions of the revealing charms taught at Hogwarts. No one else had made it past the outer wall, but the attempt was concerning. Someone knew or suspected the chamber's location, even if they couldn't access it without Parseltongue. When Harry reached the library, everything appeared undisturbed. The books remained on their shelves, the central table still covered with its collection of scrolls and open texts. Yet something felt subtly different, an energy in the air, a tension that hadn't been present before. Serpens revelio, Harry hissed in Parseltongue. The revealing spell spread through the chamber, illuminating the magical wards and protections. Most glowed a steady green gold, indicating they remained intact. But one section, near what appeared to be a secondary exit, pulsed an angry red. Someone had attempted to breach the chamber from another direction. Harry approached the area cautiously. It appeared to be a smaller doorway, previously unnoticed, set into the far wall behind a row of bookshelves. The stone around it showed scorch marks, evidence of powerful spells cast against it from the other side. Who seeks entry without right? Harry hissed, placing his hand against the door. To his surprise, the door responded, words forming in glowing script across its surface. The serpent's heir by blood, not gift, demands what is claimed as birthright. Draco Malfoy. The Malfoys had long claimed connection to Salazar Slytherin, though many old pureblood families did the same. But heir by blood, not gift seemed to distinguish between Harry's Parseltongue ability, a gift, and actual descent from Slytherin's bloodline. Harry needed to strengthen the chamber's defenses. In the Parseltongue section, he found a book on warding magic specific to Slytherin's creations. The most powerful protection required the blood of a recognized heir, which, thanks to the ring, now included Harry. The ritual was simple but solemn. Harry used the same quill to prick his finger again, allowing 7 drops of blood to fall in a circle around him as he stood before the secondary door. With each drop, he spoke a word in Parseltongue, by knowledge freely given, by wisdom earned, by magic acknowledged, I seal this chamber against those who seek power without understanding, conquest without respect, knowledge without wisdom. As the final drop fell, the blood didn't pool but sank into the stone floor, spreading outward in glowing lines that traced complex patterns before fading from sight. The air thrummed with power momentarily, and Harry felt the wards throughout the chamber strengthen, connecting more firmly with his own magical signature. The door was now sealed against anyone attempting to enter, even another Parselmouth, unless Harry himself granted them access. With the immediate security concern addressed, Harry turned his attention back to exploring the library's contents. Tonight, he focused on a section dedicated to mental magic, not just occlumency and legilimency as he knew them, but more sophisticated techniques for organizing thoughts, enhancing memory, and perceiving magical influences on the mind. One book in particular caught his attention, The Segmented Mind, Protection Through Partition. It described techniques for compartmentalizing thoughts and memories, creating mental structures more sophisticated than the crude walls taught in basic occlumency. Harry settled at the table with the book, absorbing its techniques. Rather than visualizing a single barrier against intrusion, it taught the creation of multiple chambers within the mind, some containing genuine memories, others containing plausible decoys, others completely hidden even from passive legilimency scans. This would have been bloody useful during Snape's occlumency lessons, Harry muttered, remembering the brutal mental assaults he'd endured last year. He practiced the basic technique, visualizing his mind as Hogwarts itself, a castle with many rooms, secret passages, and hidden chambers. Genuine thoughts he was willing to share occupied the Great Hall and common areas. Sensitive information retreated to equivalent locations of the Room of Requirement or Chamber of Secrets. The structure felt natural, built on a place he knew intimately. After an hour of practice, Harry felt a subtle shift in his mental organization. Thoughts seemed clearer, more accessible when needed, more securely contained when not. The constant background anxiety about Voldemort potentially accessing his mind diminished as he gained confidence in this new mental architecture. Dawn was approaching when Harry finally gathered his things to leave. As he prepared to exit, his enhanced senses detected a new magical disturbance, not at the sealed secondary door but at the main entrance he used. Someone was in the outer passage, not yet in the library but on the spiral staircase leading down. Harry quickly disillusioned himself, backing into a shadowed corner with a clear view of the main door. His wand ready, he waited silently as footsteps approached. The door opened, and a tall figure entered cautiously, wand illuminated. Professor Silius Blackthorn. Harry held his breath, pressing deeper into the shadows. How had Blackthorn found the entrance? More importantly, how had he opened it without Parseltongue? The professor moved with careful precision, his sharp gaze taking in the vast library with an expression of wonder and calculation. He approached the central table, examining the open books there without touching them. Remarkable, Blackthorn murmured. Completely intact after all these centuries. Slytherin was a greater master of preservation charms than anyone realized. He circled the room slowly, studying the shelves with academic intensity. When he reached the section where Harry had performed the blood warding, Blackthorn paused, his head tilting as if listening to something only he could hear. Fresh magic, he whispered. Recent and powerful. Blood-based. His expression darkened. Someone else has found this place. Someone recognized by Slytherin's enchantments. Blackthorn turned slowly, his gaze sweeping the room, including the corner where Harry stood concealed. For a heart-stopping moment, Harry thought the professor had spotted him despite the disillusionment charm. But Blackthorn's eyes moved on, continuing his assessment of the chamber. The old families have sought this for centuries, Blackthorn continued, apparently speaking to himself. Malfoy, Nott, Lestrange, all claiming to be Slytherin's true heirs, all failing to find what was hidden beneath their very feet at Hogwarts. He approached a shelf containing particularly ancient texts, his fingers hovering just above their spines without touching. The Ministry would seal this place in an instant if they knew. Too dangerous for public knowledge, they'd say. Too many secrets better left forgotten. Blackthorn laughed softly, the sound echoing in the vast space. As if knowledge itself can be dangerous. It's always the intent that corrupts, never the information. Harry remained perfectly still, barely breathing. Blackthorn's words suggested he wasn't allied with the Malfoys or the Ministry, but that didn't make him an ally either. After examining more shelves, Blackthorn returned to the central table. He removed something from his robes, a small silver instrument that resembled a complex compass with multiple spinning dials. When activated, it emitted a soft blue light that pulsed rhythmically. Find the focal point, Blackthorn commanded. The device spun rapidly, then pointed toward the floor where Harry had performed the blood ritual. Blackthorn followed its guidance, kneeling to examine the stonework more closely. Blood wards, he confirmed. Recently strengthened. But by whom? He stood, pocketing the device and drawing his wand again. Whoever you are, he called to the seemingly empty chamber, know that I mean this place no harm. I've sought Slytherin's lost library for decades, not to destroy or exploit, but to understand. Knowledge deserves preservation, not censorship. Harry remained silent, unwilling to reveal himself despite Blackthorn's apparent scholarly intentions. The professor waited a moment, then nodded as if he'd expected no response. Very well. Keep your secrets for now. But remember, Hogwarts has eyes everywhere, and some of us have learned to see through them. With that cryptic statement, Blackthorn turned and exited the chamber, the door sealing behind him. Harry remained frozen in place for several minutes, ensuring the professor had truly departed before canceling his disillusionment charm. His mind raced with questions. How had Blackthorn found and entered the chamber without Parseltongue? What was his true interest in Slytherin's library? And most concerning, what had he meant about Hogwarts having eyes everywhere? One thing was certain, Harry's discovery was no longer a secret. Between Malfoy's mysterious assignment and Blackthorn's direct exploration, others were actively seeking what he'd found. The knowledge preserved in this chamber was becoming a focal point for multiple agendas, some scholarly, others potentially dangerous. Harry needed to accelerate his learning, to better understand what he'd discovered before others could claim or misuse it. And perhaps most importantly, he needed to decide whether to continue keeping this secret from Ron and Hermione. As he made his way back to Gryffindor Tower in the pre-dawn light, Harry realized he'd reached a turning point. The Chamber of Secrets had lived up to its name in ways he'd never imagined, and those secrets were becoming harder to contain with each passing day. Chapter 2, Knowledge Unbound. Harry woke to Ron shaking his shoulder roughly. "Mate, you're gonna miss breakfast again. What's with you lately?" Harry blinked groggily, fumbling for his glasses. His late-night explorations were catching up with him. "Sorry. Didn't sleep well." "No kidding. You were mumbling in Parseltongue half the night." Freaked Neville right out. Harry sat bolt upright. "I was what? Talking snake language in your sleep. Something about knowledge and worthy heirs. Dead creepy." Harry's hand instinctively went to the invisible ring on his finger. He'd kept Slytherin's secret for nearly a week now, exploring the hidden library every night while maintaining a facade of normalcy during the day. But the strain was showing, in his exhaustion, his distraction, and now sleep-talking in Parseltongue. "Must have been a weird dream," Harry muttered, throwing back his covers. Ron gave him a searching look. "You tell me if something was going on, right? Like, you know who stuff or whatever." The concern in Ron's voice hit Harry like a bludger. He'd been so caught up in his discovery that he hadn't considered how his behavior looked to his friends. They'd been through too much together for him to keep shutting them out. "Actually," Harry said, lowering his voice, "there is something. But not here. After breakfast, we need to talk, you, me, and Hermione. Somewhere private." Ron's eyes widened. "Serious?" "Yeah. But it's not Voldemort," Harry added quickly. "It's something else. Something at Hogwarts. Blimey. All right then." 20 minutes later, they joined Hermione in the Great Hall. She immediately noticed their tension. "What's wrong?" she demanded, setting down her copy of the Daily Prophet. "Nothing," Harry said, piling eggs onto his plate despite his lack of appetite. "But we need to talk after breakfast. Just the three of us." Hermione's eyes narrowed with familiar analytical precision. "Does this have anything to do with your mysterious research and sudden magical improvements?" Harry nearly choked on his pumpkin juice. "What improvements?" "Oh please," Hermione rolled her eyes. "You cast a perfect bird-conjuring charm yesterday on your first try." McGonagall nearly fell off her chair. "And Flitwick can't stop talking about your innovative approach to banishing charms. Not to mention that modified shield charm you taught the DA," Ron added. "Which, by the way, you still haven't properly explained where you learned it." Harry sighed. They were too observant for their own good. "After breakfast," he repeated. "Room of requirement." They ate quickly, then made their way to the 7th-floor corridor. Harry paced 3 times before the blank wall, thinking, "We need a place to talk privately, where no one can overhear or interrupt us." The door materialized, and they entered a cozy room with a crackling fireplace, 3 comfortable armchairs, and, Harry noted with approval, no portraits on the walls. "All right," Ron said, dropping into a chair. "What's going on?" Harry took a deep breath. "I found something. Something big." He twisted the invisible ring nervously. "I found Salazar Slytherin's secret library." Hermione gasped. Ron's mouth fell open. "His what?" Hermione finally managed. "His library. Under the Chamber of Secrets, or connected to it, anyway. There's a different entrance in the dungeons. I found it about a week ago." "A week?" Ron exclaimed. "You've been sitting on this for a week?" "I needed to understand it first," Harry said defensively. "To make sure it wasn't dangerous before involving you." "So it's safe?" Hermione asked, leaning forward. "It's not dangerous in the way you're thinking. No basilisks or cursed books. But the knowledge there, it's powerful. It changes everything we've been taught about Hogwarts, about magic, about Slytherin himself." Harry explained his discovery, the hidden entrance, the vast collection of books, Slytherin's personal journals, and the revelation that Slytherin's views had been distorted over time. He told them about Tom Riddle's journal entries, Blackthorn's mysterious appearance, and the attempted breach from another entrance. He didn't mention the ring. Not yet. That's... Hermione seemed speechless for once. Harry, this is the most significant historical discovery at Hogwarts in centuries. Forget history, Ron said. You're telling me there's an entire library of advanced magic that nobody knows about? Magic that even you-know-who couldn't fully access? Yes, but that's not the point, Harry said. The point is that everything we thought we knew about Slytherin is wrong. He wasn't just obsessed with blood purity. He wanted to preserve magical knowledge that the other founders thought was too powerful or dangerous to teach. And you think they were wrong to restrict it? Hermione asked cautiously. I think, it's complicated, Harry admitted. Some of what's down there probably should be restricted. But most of it is just, deeper. More advanced. It teaches why magic works, not just how to perform specific spells. Can you show us? Ron asked. Harry hesitated. That's why I'm telling you now. I think I need to. Things are happening, Malfoy's looking for something in the castle, Blackthorn already found the chamber somehow. I can't keep this secret much longer. Tonight then, Hermione said decisively. After curfew. We'll all go under the invisibility cloak. One problem, Ron pointed out. We can't speak Parseltongue. If that's how you open it, I can open it for you, Harry said. And once we're inside, most of the books are in English or Latin. It's only a specific section that's in Parseltongue. They agreed to meet in the common room at midnight. As they left the room of requirement, Hermione grabbed Harry's arm, holding him back while Ron walked ahead. There's something you're not telling us, she said quietly. Harry blinked. What do you mean? I know you, Harry. You're holding something back. Something about how this library has affected you. Her perceptiveness was unnerving. Harry hesitated, then made a decision. There's one more thing, he admitted, dropping the disillusionment charm on Slytherin's ring. I found this in the chamber. It belonged to Slytherin, or at least, he created it for his chosen successors. Hermione stared at the silver ring with its gleaming emerald. You're wearing it? Harry, that could be incredibly dangerous. Have you checked it for curses? It's not cursed. At least, not in the way you mean. It enhances magical perception. Helps me understand magical theory better, see connections I couldn't before. That's how you've been improving so quickly in classes, she realized. Harry nodded. It's not giving me more power, just better understanding. I can see how spells work now, why certain movements and words channel magic in specific ways. Harry, you need to tell Dumbledore about this. All of it. Magical artifacts that affect your mind, it doesn't affect my mind. Harry protested. It just clarifies things. And I'm not ready to tell Dumbledore yet. Not until I understand everything better. Hermione looked deeply troubled. Promise me you'll be careful. And if anything starts feeling wrong, anything at all, you'll take it off immediately. I promise, Harry agreed, reapplying the disillusionment charm. Tonight, you'll see everything for yourself. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. In Transfiguration, Harry struggled to hide his enhanced understanding when McGonagall challenged them to transform teacups into tortoises. His tortoise was nearly perfect on the first try, earning him a rare approving nod from McGonagall and a suspicious glance from Hermione. Potions was even more challenging. Harry found himself automatically adjusting his technique based on his new understanding of magical interactions, drawing Snape's attention. Potter, Snape said coldly, hovering over Harry's cauldron as they prepared strengthening solutions. You've deviated from the instructions. Again. Harry glanced down at his potion, which simmered a perfect shade of turquoise rather than the murky blue most students had achieved. I just thought the powdered griffin claw would incorporate better if I added it gradually instead of all at once, sir. Snape's eyes narrowed. And where, precisely, did you learn such a refinement? It certainly isn't in your textbook. Just, intuition, Professor. Intuition, Snape repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. How fascinating that after 5 years of demonstrating no aptitude whatsoever for the subtle science of potion making, you suddenly develop intuition. Harry met his gaze steadily, careful to maintain his mental barriers. People can improve, sir. Indeed. Snape's eyes bored into Harry's for an uncomfortable moment. 2 points to Gryffindor, he finally said, so quietly that only Harry heard it. For unexpected competence. Ron nearly knocked over his cauldron in shock. After dinner, Harry noticed Malfoy watching him from the Slytherin table, his pointed face set in a calculating expression rather than his usual sneer. When their eyes met, Malfoy didn't look away but instead gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging something only they understood. Back in Gryffindor Tower, the hours until midnight passed with excruciating slowness. Harry pretended to read his charms textbook while actually reviewing mental notes about Slytherin's library, planning what to show Ron and Hermione first. Finally, the common room emptied. At 5 minutes to midnight, Ron and Hermione joined Harry by the fireplace. "Ready?" Harry asked, pulling out his invisibility cloak. "I still think we should tell a professor," Hermione whispered as they huddled beneath the cloak. "After we've seen it," Harry insisted. "Then we'll decide together." Navigating 3 teenagers under one cloak was challenging, but they'd had years of practice. They made their way through the silent corridors, down staircases, and into the dungeons without encountering Filch or any patrolling teachers. Harry led them to the unremarkable stone wall with its small serpent carving. In the wand light, the etching seemed to shimmer slightly, more visible to Harry than before he'd found the ring. "This is it," Ron whispered dubiously. "Looks like a regular wall." "Watch," Harry said, slipping out from under the cloak. He placed his hand on the carving and whispered in Parseltongue, "I seek knowledge, not conquest. I come to learn, Salazar, not to judge." Ron and Hermione flinched at the hissing sounds, but their eyes widened as the wall reconfigured itself, stones sliding apart to reveal the hidden passage. "Bloody hell," Ron breathed. Harry gestured them forward. "Come on. It'll close behind us." They entered, the wall sealing shut as Harry had predicted. With a whispered "Lumos," Harry illuminated the spiral staircase descending into darkness. "This wasn't on the Marauders' map," Hermione noted as they began their descent. "I checked," Harry confirmed. "Neither is the Chamber of Secrets. I think certain parts of Hogwarts are too secret even for the map." The staircase seemed to go on forever, spiraling deeper beneath the school than should have been possible. Finally, they reached the small antechamber with its serpent-flanked doorway. "This part's trickier," Harry explained, approaching the stone serpents with their emerald eyes. "There's a key mechanism." He performed the now familiar ritual, activating the emerald beams with Lumos Maxima, retrieving the materialized double-headed key, and inserting it into both locks simultaneously. The serpents twisted the key in unison, and the door slid open. The gasp from Hermione and the whispered expletive from Ron confirmed that the library's impact wasn't just in Harry's imagination. The vast circular chamber with its towering bookshelves, spiral staircase, and central research table was genuinely awe-inspiring. "Sweet Merlin," Hermione whispered, stepping forward with reverence. "This is... I've never seen anything like it." "It's bigger than the regular library," Ron noted, craning his neck to see the upper levels. "And much older," Harry added. "Some of these books date back to the Founders' era. Including Slytherin's personal journals." At the mention of journals, Hermione's academic instincts took over. "Where? Can I see them?" Harry led them to the central table where he'd left Slytherin's journal during his last visit. The green leather-bound book lay open to an entry Harry had been studying, a detailed explanation of Slytherin's views on magical education. Hermione approached it cautiously, as if it might bite. "Is it safe to touch?" It's not cursed, Harry assured her. It's just a journal. Historically significant, but not dangerous. She carefully pulled the book closer, eyes widening as she scanned the angular handwriting. Ron peered over her shoulder, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. "This doesn't sound like the Slytherin we learned about," he said after a moment. "Exactly," Harry agreed. He wasn't obsessed with blood purity for its own sake. He was concerned about magical children's safety in Muggle households, about the risks of exposure during witch hunts, about preserving magical knowledge that was being lost. "Listen to this," Hermione read aloud. "Godric insists that courage matters above all else, that any child showing magical ability deserves our teaching regardless of circumstance. A noble sentiment, but dangerously naive. 3 children have already been withdrawn by fearful Muggle parents, one narrowly escaping burning after accidentally revealing magic at home. These are not theoretical concerns but immediate dangers. Perhaps in a more enlightened future, Godric's approach will prove wiser. For now, caution must prevail." She looked up, her academic mind visibly reassessing centuries of accepted history. "This presents a completely different perspective on the Founders' disagreements." "That's just the beginning," Harry said, pointing to other shelves. "There's an entire section on magical theory that goes way beyond what we're taught. Spellcrafting principles, wand movement fundamentals, mental magic techniques, stuff that makes our current curriculum look like basics for beginners." Ron wandered to another shelf, pulling down a thin volume bound in dark leather. "Advanced Magical Combat, Principles and Applications," he read. "Bloody hell, Harry. This is Aura-level stuff, maybe beyond. Why would this knowledge be hidden?" Hermione wondered, still paging through Slytherin's journal. "Some of it seems perfectly reasonable, even essential." "Because people fear what they don't understand," Harry replied, echoing words he'd read in Slytherin's writings. The other founders thought some magic was too powerful or too dangerous for students. Slytherin disagreed. He thought understanding power was the best way to use it responsibly. "That's actually a fair point," Hermione admitted reluctantly. "Though I can see both sides." "Look at this," Ron called from another shelf. He held a book titled, Forgotten Branches, Magical Arts Abandoned by Modern Wizardry. "It says here there used to be dozens of recognized magical disciplines that got phased out of education over the centuries. Stuff like elemental manipulation, battle transfiguration, and, blimey, thought architecture." "That one's brilliant," Harry said, moving to Ron's side. "It's about structuring your mind to enhance memory, resist mental influence, and organize thoughts more efficiently." "I've been practicing it." Hermione shot him a worried look. "Harry, experimenting with unknown mind magic, it's not dark," Harry insisted. "Just forgotten. And it works. My occlumency's 10 times better now." They spent the next hour exploring different sections of the library, with Hermione growing increasingly excited about the historical significance and Ron focusing on the practical magical applications. Harry guided them through his favorite discoveries, carefully avoiding the Parseltongue section for now. "What about this?" Hermione asked eventually, pointing to a door behind a row of bookshelves, the secondary entrance Harry had warded against intrusion. "That leads to another part of the castle," Harry explained. "Someone tried to break in that way, I think it was Malfoy, based on what you overheard. I reinforced the wards." Ron looked impressed. "You can do that?" Harry hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. "With Slytherin's ring, yes. It required blood magic." "Harry." Hermione looked appalled. "Not dark blood magic," Harry clarified quickly. "Just a recognition ward that responds to the same person who cast it. A drop of blood to key the magic to my magical signature." "Still sounds dodgy to me," Ron muttered. "Look," Harry said, "I know how it sounds. But you need to understand, magic isn't inherently dark or light. That's a modern classification system. What matters is intent and understanding. You're starting to sound like Slytherin, Hermione observed quietly. Maybe he was right about some things, Harry replied. Not about isolating Muggleborns, but about how we approach magical knowledge. A tense silence fell. Harry could see his friend struggling with the implications of what he was suggesting, that centuries of magical education might be built on deliberate restrictions rather than natural progression. There's something else you should see, Harry said finally, breaking the silence. Tom Riddle's journal. Not the Horcrux diary, but his actual record of finding this place. He led them to the shelf where he'd found Riddle's leather-bound journal. As Hermione and Ron read the entries, their expressions grew increasingly disturbed. So you know who found this place too, Ron said grimly. But he didn't understand it the way you have. He saw it as a source of power, not knowledge, Harry agreed. He took what served his purposes and ignored the rest. Which raises an important question, Hermione said, closing Riddle's journal carefully. What do we do with this discovery? Who do we tell? If Voldemort knows about it, shouldn't Dumbledore? Harry ran a hand through his hair. That's what I've been struggling with. Dumbledore's kept secrets from me before. What if he decides to seal this place up? All this knowledge, lost again for who knows how long. But if you don't tell him, and Malfoy or someone else finds a way in. Ron left the implication hanging. I know, Harry sighed. I just need a little more time. There's so much here to learn, to understand. Hermione touched his arm gently. Harry, I understand the temptation. But you can't keep this to yourself much longer. If Professor Blackthorne already found his way in once. Speaking of which, how did he get in without Parseltongue? Ron asked. That's been bothering me too, Harry admitted. The only explanation I can think of is that he found another entrance, one that doesn't require Parseltongue. Or he can speak it, Ron suggested. Maybe he's hiding it. Hermione shook her head. Parselmouths are extremely rare. It's not something you can learn, you're born with it. Actually. Harry moved to the Parseltongue section he'd been avoiding. According to Slytherin's writings, that's not entirely true. Parseltongue is hereditary, yes, but it can also manifest in witches and wizards with certain magical affinities. And in some cases, it can be learned, not fluently, but enough for basic commands. Hermione's academic interest visibly overcame her reservations. Where does it say that? Harry indicated the shelf of serpent-script books. In these texts. They're written in Parseltongue, but they explain the nature of the ability itself. Can you read them? Ron asked. When I focus on them as Parseltongue, yes. Harry pulled down a slim volume. This one describes how the ability works. It's not just about talking to snakes, it's a magical language that interacts differently with certain types of magic. Hermione looked fascinated despite herself. That's, actually quite logical. Many ancient magical languages had power beyond mere communication. Egyptian hieroglyphs, for instance, were believed to manifest reality when properly inscribed. Exactly, Harry nodded. Parseltongue is particularly effective for certain branches of magic, protection spells, healing magic, and revealing hidden things. Ron suddenly grabbed Harry's arm. Did you hear that? They fell silent, listening. A faint sound echoed from the spiral staircase, footsteps descending. Someone's coming, Harry whispered, drawing his wand. Quick, over here. He pulled them behind a large bookshelf, casting disillusionment charms over all three of them. They weren't as effective as his invisibility cloak, which he'd left folded on the central table, but they'd have to do. The main door opened slowly. A pale blonde head poked through cautiously, followed by the rest of Draco Malfoy. He entered alone, his pointed face a mixture of triumph and wariness as he surveyed the vast library. I knew it, he whispered to himself. It's real. Harry exchanged alarmed glances with Ron and Hermione, though they were barely visible under the disillusionment charms. How had Malfoy gotten past the Parseltongue requirement? Draco moved further into the chamber, running his fingers reverently along the spines of books. Father was right. Slytherin's true legacy, hidden all this time. He approached the central table, spotting Harry's invisibility cloak. A smirk spread across his face. Potter, he spat. Should have known. Without warning, Draco spun toward their hiding spot. I know you're here, Potter. Show yourself. Harry hesitated, then made a split-second decision. He cancelled his disillusionment charm, stepping out from behind the bookshelf with his wand raised. How did you get in, Malfoy? Draco's eyes narrowed, but he looked oddly satisfied, as if Harry's presence confirmed something. Wouldn't you like to know? Family secrets, Potter. Some of us have real wizarding heritage to draw on. Ron cancelled his own disillusionment, appearing beside Harry with his wand aimed at Malfoy. Back off, ferret. You're outnumbered. Hermione appeared on Harry's other side, her wand also raised. This isn't a place for your blood purity nonsense, Malfoy. You don't understand what you found. Don't I? Draco countered, surprisingly calm despite facing 3 wands. I understand perfectly. This is Salazar Slytherin's hidden repository of knowledge, knowledge my family has sought for generations. Then you know it's not what you think, Harry said. It's not about pure-blood supremacy. It's about preserving magical knowledge that was being suppressed. Something flickered across Malfoy's face, uncertainty. Don't try to rewrite history, Potter. Slytherin valued blood purity above all else. Everyone knows that. Everyone's wrong, Harry replied. Read his journals yourself. He was concerned about magical children's safety during witch hunts, about preserving magical knowledge. Yes, he favored those from magical families, but not for the reasons you think. Draco's wand hand wavered slightly. You're lying. See for yourself. Harry gestured to Slytherin's journal on the central table. His own words. Unless you're afraid to have your precious pure-blood mythology challenged. It was a calculated risk, but Harry knew Malfoy's curiosity and pride would make it difficult to resist. After a moment's hesitation, Draco approached the table cautiously, keeping his wand trained on them while glancing down at the open journal. His eyes widened as he scanned the text. It is not birth alone that makes a worthy student, but aptitude and respect for our ways, he read aloud. I have seen Muggle-born children with greater natural talent than those of oldest lineage. Draco looked genuinely shaken. This can't be real. It contradicts everything you've been taught, Harry finished. Yeah, it contradicted what I thought I knew too. History gets distorted over time, especially when it's written by the winning side. Potter's right, Hermione said, lowering her wand slightly. Primary historical sources often reveal nuances that get lost in later accounts. What we know about Slytherin comes from centuries of interpretation and reinterpretation. Draco shot her a reflexive glare, but it lacked its usual venom. He seemed too preoccupied with the journal to muster proper contempt. If this is genuine. It is, Harry confirmed. And there's more. Sections on magical theory, spellcrafting, disciplines that aren't taught anymore. Knowledge that could benefit all wizards, not just purebloods. Why are you telling me this? Draco asked suspiciously. Why not just stun me and leave me here? Because this place isn't about division, Harry said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Slytherin didn't want his knowledge restricted to one type of wizard. He wanted it preserved for those who would use it wisely, regardless of background. Ron gave Harry a skeptical look but kept his wand trained on Malfoy. Still doesn't explain how he got in without Parseltongue. That's what I'd like to know, Harry agreed, focusing on Draco. The entrance requires Parseltongue. How did you open it? Malfoy hesitated, then reached into his robes and withdrew a small, ornate box carved with serpentine patterns. This. It's been in my family for centuries, supposedly created by Slytherin himself. A Parseltongue recorder, Hermione gasped. I've read about these. They capture and reproduce sounds exactly, including magical languages. Father gave it to me after. Draco faltered. After the Dark Lord's return. Said it might help me find something important at Hogwarts. Did he know about this place specifically? Harry asked. Draco shook his head. He knew legends about Slytherin hiding more than just the basilisk. Family stories passed down for generations. But no one knew exactly where or what. So you recorded me using Parseltongue somewhere, Harry realized. When? During care of magical creatures last year. You were talking to that grass snake that Hagrid brought for class. Harry remembered the incident, a harmless garden snake that had wrapped itself around his arm, complaining about being handled by clumsy large feet, Hagrid. He'd absently reassured it without realizing others were paying close attention. And you've been trying different places around the castle to use it, Harry guessed. Draco nodded reluctantly. I've been searching for months. Nearly got caught by Filch dozens of times. An uncomfortable silence fell as they all processed this new development. Malfoy had found the chamber, but his understanding of its significance was being challenged by what he was discovering. So what happens now? Draco finally asked. You report me to Dumbledore. Take house points. Harry exchanged looks with Ron and Hermione. Actually, I haven't told Dumbledore either. I'm not sure he'd understand the importance of this place. Harry. Hermione protested. You can't be serious, Ron added. You're not suggesting we share this with Malfoy. I'm suggesting we think carefully before involving anyone else, Harry clarified. Including professors. Especially since someone else already knows, a new voice announced from the entrance. All 4 students whirled around, wands raised, to find Professor Blackthorn standing in the doorway, regarding them with an expression of mild interest rather than anger. Professor. Hermione squeaked. Miss Granger. Mr. Weasley. Mr. Malfoy. Blackthorn nodded to each of them in turn before focusing on Harry. And Mr. Potter. I suspected you were the one who reinforced the blood wards. Impressive work for a 5th year. How did you find this place? Harry demanded, not lowering his wand. And how did you get in without Parseltongue? Blackthorn smiled slightly. To answer your second question first, there are other entrances to Slytherin's repository, though most have been sealed or forgotten over the centuries. As for how I found it. He held up a small silver device similar to the one Harry had seen him use before. This detects concentrations of ancient magic. The castle has many such places, but this one is special. You're not surprised, Hermione observed shrewdly. No, Miss Granger, I am not. Blackthorn stepped further into the chamber, his gaze sweeping over the towering bookshelves. I've been searching for Slytherin's lost library for most of my academic career. Finding it now is serendipitous. You knew it existed? Draco asked. I suspected. There have always been rumors among certain scholarly circles, references in obscure texts, hints in ancient correspondence between early Hogwarts masters. But solid evidence? No, not until recently. Blackthorn turned to Harry. Until Mr. Potter here began demonstrating magical understanding well beyond his years. Subtle modifications to standard spells, theoretical insights that aren't in the curriculum, signs that could only mean access to knowledge that isn't publicly available. Harry tensed. Are you going to report this to Dumbledore? That depends, Blackthorn said mildly. On what you intend to do with what you found. Learn from it, Harry replied without hesitation. Understand it. Not hide it or use it for power over others. Blackthorn studied him intently. An admirable answer. But learning has consequences, Mr. Potter. Knowledge changes the knower. Are you prepared for that? Before Harry could respond, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. Books rattled on their shelves, and dust drifted down from the ceiling. What was that? Ron asked nervously. Another tremor, stronger this time. A few books tumbled from their shelves. Someone's attacking the wards, Blackthorn said sharply, drawing his wand. Powerful magic, directed at the chamber's defenses. From where? Harry asked, moving instinctively toward the secondary door he'd warded. Not there, Blackthorn shook his head. From above. Someone in the castle has detected this place and is attempting to breach it magically. A third tremor, violent enough to knock them off balance. The central table slid several inches across the floor. We need to leave, Blackthorn ordered. Now. The defenses will hold temporarily, but we shouldn't be here when they fail. But all this knowledge, Hermione protested, looking desperately at the thousands of books surrounding them. Will remain, Blackthorn assured her. But you five won't if you stay. The magical backlash from broken wards this ancient could be catastrophic. 5. Ron counted quickly. There's only 4 of us. Blackthorn's expression darkened. No. There's someone else here. Someone who's been watching us since we arrived. He flicked his wand in a complex pattern, sending a pulse of revealing magic across the chamber. In the far corner, a disillusioned figure flickered briefly into visibility before disappearing again. Show yourself. Blackthorn commanded, his wand trained on the spot where the figure had appeared. Another violent tremor shook the chamber. Cracks appeared in the ceiling, and several stones broke loose, crashing to the floor dangerously close to where they stood. No time, Harry decided, grabbing his invisibility cloak from the table. We need to go. Even Draco didn't argue, his face pale as more stones fell from above. They rushed toward the exit as dust filled the air and the tremors increased in frequency and strength. Harry paused at the doorway, looking back at the vast repository of knowledge. We can't just leave it. The chamber has survived 1,000 years, Potter, Blackthorn said, pushing him forward. It will survive this assault. But we must understand what we're dealing with before returning. They hurried up the spiral staircase as the tremors grew more violent. The walls seemed to shift around them, stones grinding against each other as ancient magic fought against whatever force was attacking it from above. When they finally reached the dungeon corridor, bursting through the wall entrance which sealed itself immediately behind them, they found the castle eerily quiet. Whatever magical assault had targeted the chamber wasn't visible from the regular corridors of Hogwarts. Everyone return to your dormitories, Blackthorn ordered, his tone brooking no argument. Say nothing of what you've seen to anyone. Not yet. But Professor, Hermione began. Not yet, Miss Granger, he repeated firmly. This situation is more complex than you realize. We need to proceed with extreme caution. He turned to Harry. Mr. Potter, a word in private before you go. Ron and Hermione hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Harry alone with Blackthorn after what they'd witnessed. Draco looked equally uncertain, though for different reasons. It's fine, Harry assured his friends. I'll meet you back in the common room. After they departed, Ron and Hermione heading upstairs while Draco skulked toward the Slytherin dungeons, Blackthorn led Harry into an empty classroom, casting privacy wards with casual efficiency. The ring, Blackthorn said without preamble. Show me. Harry tensed. What ring? Please, Mr. Potter. I can sense its magic. Slytherin's Ring of Knowledge, one of several artifacts he created for his most promising students. I suspected you'd found it when your magical understanding improved so dramatically. Reluctantly, Harry removed the disillusionment charm, revealing the silver band with its gleaming emerald. Blackthorn's eyes widened with scholarly excitement rather than greed. Extraordinary. It accepted you immediately. After a blood test, yes. Fascinating. Blackthorn leaned closer to examine it without touching. The ring chooses based on magical affinity and intent, not bloodline as most would assume. The fact that it chose you, despite your Gryffindor affiliation. What does it mean? Harry asked. It means, Mr. Potter, that Salazar Slytherin's true legacy is far more nuanced than history records. And you have been deemed worthy to rediscover it. Blackthorn straightened. But you're not the only one seeking this knowledge. What we experienced tonight was just the beginning. Who was attacking the chamber? And who was the fifth person you detected? As to the attacker, I have suspicions but no certainty. Regarding our mystery observer. Blackthorn frowned. There are factions within the Ministry who have long sought to control or destroy any magic they consider unregulated. Senior Undersecretary Umbridge being merely the most visible representative. You think it was someone from the Ministry? Spying on Hogwarts? I think, Mr. Potter, that you've stumbled into a conflict that has been brewing for centuries. Between those who believe magical knowledge should be preserved and those who believe it should be controlled. Blackthorn's expression grew serious. And you now possess an artifact that makes you a central figure in that conflict, whether you wish it or not. Harry absorbed this, twisting the ring on his finger. What should I do? Continue learning, Blackthorn advised. The chamber will repair itself, Slytherin's protections are remarkably resilient. But be cautious about who you trust with knowledge of its existence. He paused. Even the headmaster. You don't think I should tell Dumbledore? Blackthorn chose his words carefully. Albus Dumbledore is a great wizard with admirable intentions. But he has very firm views on what magic should and shouldn't be accessible to students. Views that might not align with preserving Slytherin's complete legacy. He moved toward the door. Think on what you've discovered, Mr. Potter. About Slytherin, about magic itself. Then decide who deserves to share in that knowledge. After Blackthorn departed, Harry made his way back to Gryffindor Tower, his mind whirling with new questions and concerns. The revelation that others were actively seeking, and attempting to destroy, Slytherin's library changed everything. What had begun as a personal discovery was rapidly becoming something much larger and more dangerous. He told you not to tell Dumbledore. Hermione repeated incredulously when Harry related his conversation with Blackthorn. They sat in a corner of the common room, voices lowered despite the late hour and empty surroundings. That seems highly suspicious. I don't trust him, Ron declared flatly. Former unspeakable who just happens to find a secret chamber everyone's been looking for centuries. Too convenient. Harry twisted the invisible ring, a habit he'd developed when thinking. But what if he's right? Dumbledore's kept plenty of secrets from me before. What if he decides this knowledge is too dangerous and seals the chamber permanently? You can't seriously be considering keeping this from Dumbledore, Hermione pressed. I'm considering all options, Harry replied. Including the possibility that Blackthorn has his own agenda. And Malfoy? Ron asked. You really think he's just going to keep this quiet? His father's a Death Eater, Harry. I know. But did you see his face when he read Slytherin's journal? Everything he thought he knew about his house's founder was wrong. That's got to shake even Malfoy's worldview. Hermione sighed. So what do we do now? We wait, Harry decided. Give the chamber time to repair itself, like Blackthorn said. In the meantime, we learn what we can from the books I already have, and we watch both Blackthorn and Malfoy closely. And the fifth person? Ron asked. The one hiding in the chamber? That's what worries me most, Harry admitted. Someone was spying on us, someone skilled enough to maintain a disillusionment charm even under Blackthorn's revealing spell. Could it have been Snape? Hermione suggested. He's certainly capable of advanced concealment magic. Harry shook his head. Blackthorn would have recognized him. No, it was someone else. Someone who doesn't want their interest in the chamber known. They discussed possibilities until the common room fire burned low, without reaching any firm conclusions. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and they agreed to continue the conversation tomorrow after classes. As Harry climbed into bed, his mind returned to the moment the chamber had begun shaking. The attack had felt deliberate, precisely targeted, not random magical interference but a concerted effort to breach or destroy Slytherin's sanctuary. Who would want to destroy such knowledge? And why now, after it had remained hidden for centuries? The answer came to him as he drifted towards sleep, because someone knew he had found it. Someone who didn't want Harry Potter accessing whatever secret Salazar Slytherin had left behind. The next morning at breakfast, Harry noticed Draco watching him from the Slytherin table. When their eyes met, Malfoy gave a subtle nod toward the entrance hall, then stood and casually exited the Great Hall. "I'll be right back," Harry told Ron and Hermione, who were arguing about whether the library might have any references to secret chambers that could provide context. "Where are you going?" Hermione asked suspiciously. "Just need some air. Won't be long." Harry found Malfoy waiting in an alcove near the marble staircase, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. "Potter," he acknowledged stiffly. "Malfoy. Something on your mind?" Draco glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I've been thinking about what we found. About Slytherin's writings. And it doesn't match what I've been taught my whole life." The admission seemed physically painful for him. "My father always said Slytherin valued blood purity above all else, that his wisdom was ignored because later generations grew weak and sentimental." "But now you've read his actual words," Harry observed. "Yes." Draco looked genuinely troubled. "He valued magical talent regardless of birth. He even wrote about Muggle-born students with exceptional abilities. Changes things, doesn't it? It changes everything." Draco hissed, showing real emotion for once. "If Slytherin himself didn't believe what my family has preached for generations. Maybe you should question what else they've told you," Harry suggested carefully. Draco's expression hardened. "Don't push it, Potter. This doesn't make us friends. Wouldn't dream of it. But it might make us not enemies, at least on this one thing." After a tense pause, Draco nodded reluctantly. "There's something else you should know. My father contacted me last night. He knows something happened at Hogwarts. Something involving ancient magic being disturbed." Harry tensed. How could he know that? He has sources in the Ministry. Magical disturbances of that magnitude get detected, especially when they involve founder-level enchantments. Draco lowered his voice further. He asked if I'd made progress on my special assignment. I didn't tell him anything specific, but he'll expect answers eventually, Harry finished. Great. There's more, Draco continued. He mentioned that others were taking an interest, people in the Ministry's Department of Mysteries, and... He hesitated. And Voldemort? Harry guessed. Draco flinched at the name but nodded. The Dark Lord has always been obsessed with Hogwarts secrets. If he learns about the library, he'll want it for himself, Harry concluded grimly. Just like he did 50 years ago. I'm not supposed to be telling you this, Draco admitted. But after what I read, I'm not sure who's right anymore. And I don't want to see Slytherin's knowledge destroyed or corrupted. Harry studied Malfoy with newfound respect. So what are you suggesting? A truce. Limited cooperation regarding the chamber and its contents. I don't tell my father or anyone else what we found, and you. Draco struggled visibly. You don't exclude me from future explorations. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Draco replied bluntly. But right now, I'm questioning everything I've been raised to believe. That makes me unpredictable to both sides, which might be useful to you. Harry considered this unexpected proposal. An alliance with Malfoy, however limited, went against every instinct. But if Draco was genuinely questioning his family's ideology after reading Slytherin's journals. All right, Harry decided. Limited cooperation. But at the first sign you're playing both sides, the deal's off. Draco nodded curtly. Agreed. One more thing, Harry added as Malfoy turned to leave. That Parseltongue recorder box. I want it. Absolutely not, Draco snapped. Family heirloom, Potter. That you've been using to sneak around the castle. I need some assurance you won't go back to the chamber without us. After a moment's tense consideration, Draco reached into his robes and reluctantly produced the ornate box. Fine. But I want your word you'll return it when this is over. When what's over, exactly? Whatever this is, Draco gestured vaguely. This, rediscovery of Slytherin's true legacy. When we figure out what to do with it. Harry accepted the box, examining its intricate serpentine carvings. Deal. As Draco walked away, Harry turned the recorder over in his hands, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake or a strategically brilliant move. Either way, the circle of those who knew about Slytherin's library was growing, first Ron and Hermione, then Blackthorn, now Malfoy. How long before the secret spread beyond their control? Back in the Great Hall, he related his conversation with Malfoy to Ron and Hermione, whose reactions were predictably divided. You can't seriously trust him, Ron insisted. It's Malfoy. I don't trust him completely, Harry clarified. But I believe he's genuinely shaken by what he read. And having him as a reluctant ally might be better than having him as a definite enemy. It's actually quite logical, Hermione said, surprising both boys. Keeping potential opponents close allows you to monitor their actions and influence their decisions. Exactly, Harry agreed. Plus, he gave me this. He showed them the Parseltongue recorder under the table. Hermione examined it with academic interest. This is incredibly rare magical craftsmanship. The ability to capture and reproduce magical languages without losing their magical properties. I've only read about such devices. Can you figure out how it works? Harry asked. I can try. It might help us understand how Blackthorn accessed the chamber without Parseltongue. Classes that day passed in a blur of distraction. Harry found himself analyzing every professor's behavior for signs they might know about the chamber. McGonagall seemed entirely normal, focused on their vanishing spells with her usual demanding precision. Snape, however, watched Harry with increased suspicion, his dark eyes narrowing whenever Harry demonstrated his enhanced understanding of potion interactions. Defense against the dark arts with Umbridge was particularly uncomfortable. Her saccharine smile seemed more predatory than usual as she had them read another useless chapter from their textbook. Harry could swear she lingered near his desk more than necessary, her toad-like eyes studying him with malicious curiosity. Mr. Potter, she simpered as class ended. A moment, please. Harry exchanged worried glances with Ron and Hermione before approaching her desk. Yes, Professor. I've noticed a change in your demeanor recently, Umbridge said, her voice falsely sweet. Your magical performance in other classes has improved dramatically, according to my colleagues. Most unusual for a student to show such sudden advancement. I've been studying harder, Harry replied neutrally. Have you indeed? Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes were cold. How interesting that your improvements coincide with reports of unusual magical disturbances within the castle. Harry maintained a carefully blank expression. I wouldn't know anything about that, Professor. No. She leaned forward slightly. The Ministry takes a great interest in unauthorized magic, Mr. Potter. Particularly magic that might threaten the established educational framework. I'm just trying to pass my OWLs, Harry said, fighting to keep his tone respectful despite his growing anger. Of course you are. Umbridge's smile widened unpleasantly. Just remember, Mr. Potter, the Ministry is watching Hogwarts very closely these days. Nothing remains hidden forever. The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as Harry left the classroom, his hands clenched into fists. Umbridge knew something, or at least suspected. Was she the one who had attacked the chamber? Or was she working with whoever had? Harry relayed the conversation to Ron and Hermione as they headed to dinner. She's horrid, Hermione whispered furiously. But this confirms Blackthorn's warning about Ministry involvement. If Umbridge suspects you found forbidden knowledge, then we need to be even more careful, Harry concluded. No more visits to the chamber until we understand who's targeting it and why. Ron nodded grimly. And what about tonight's DA meeting? Still on? Harry hesitated. Teaching defensive magic to their secret group suddenly seemed more essential than ever, but also more dangerous given Umbridge's heightened suspicion. We proceed as planned, he decided. But I'll modify what I was going to teach. Nothing that would reveal my new knowledge too obviously. The DA meeting that evening went smoothly on the surface. The room of requirement provided their usual practice space, and 25 students from 3 houses gathered to continue their real defense education away from Umbridge's useless curriculum. Harry led them through shield charm variations that were advanced but still within the standard magical framework, nothing that would raise suspicions about the source of his knowledge. But he couldn't help noticing how much clearer his understanding of the magical principles had become. When Neville struggled with a particular shield, Harry could now see exactly why. His wand movement dispersed magical energy too widely instead of concentrating it at the point of protection. Try holding your wrist more rigid during the final flick, Harry suggested. Imagine the magic flowing like water through a pipe, you're directing its path, not just releasing it. Neville's face scrunched in concentration as he adjusted his technique. Protego. To his obvious delight, a much stronger shield formed, deflecting Ginny's stunning spell completely. Harry, that's brilliant. Neville exclaimed. How did you know that would work? Just something I read about wand movement efficiency, Harry said casually, though he could feel Hermione watching him with knowing concern. After the meeting, as students filtered out in small groups to avoid detection, Harry noticed Cho Chang lingering behind, clearly wanting to speak with him alone. Once the room had emptied except for Ron, Hermione, and Cho, she approached somewhat shyly. Harry, could I talk to you for a minute? Ron nudged Hermione. We'll wait outside, mate. Before Harry could protest, they slipped out, leaving him alone with Cho. He'd had a crush on her last year, but the chaos following the Triwizard Tournament and Cedric's death had complicated everything. You're a really good teacher, Cho said, smiling faintly. Everyone's saying it. Thanks. I just want everyone to be prepared, you know, with Voldemort back and the Ministry denying it. Cho nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. I've noticed you've been different lately. More confident, more focused. Harry tensed. Just taking things more seriously, I guess. It's not just that. She stepped closer. You explain magic differently now, like you really understand it, not just how to perform spells but why they work. It's impressive. I've been doing a lot of independent reading, Harry said, which wasn't entirely untrue. Cho studied him thoughtfully. There's a legend in Ravenclaw Tower, you know. About hidden knowledge within Hogwarts, accessible only to those who truly seek wisdom for its own sake. Harry's pulse quickened. What kind of legend? Rowena Ravenclaw supposedly created a repository of advanced magical knowledge, books and scrolls too powerful or complex for regular students. The Grey Lady sometimes hints about it when she's in a talkative mood. Have you told anyone else about this legend? Cho shook her head. Most people think it's just another Hogwarts myth, like moving staircases that lead to different centuries or halls that only appear during full moons. But you don't think it's just a myth? I think, Cho said carefully, that Hogwarts has more secrets than even the founders anticipated. And I think you might have found one of them. Harry maintained a neutral expression. What makes you say that? The way you've changed. The way you understand magic now. She smiled slightly. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to confirm anything. Just, be careful. Some secrets are protected for a reason. Before Harry could respond, the door to the room of requirement opened, and Ron stuck his head in. "Harry, we need to go. Filch is patrolling this corridor." Cho stepped back. "Think about what I said. And maybe check with the Grey Lady, she knows more about Hogwarts secrets than most." As they parted ways, Harry felt another piece of the puzzle falling into place. If Ravenclaw had also created a hidden repository of knowledge, perhaps all the founders had their own secret legacies within Hogwarts. The implications were staggering, for separate collections of advanced magical knowledge, hidden for a millennium. What did Cho want? Ron asked as they hurried back toward Gryffindor Tower under the invisibility cloak. "To tell me about a Ravenclaw legend," Harry replied. "About hidden knowledge in the castle. Another secret chamber?" Hermione whispered. "That would make sense historically. Each founder might have created their own repository. The Grey Lady supposedly knows something about it," Harry added. "Cho suggested I talk to her." "The Ravenclaw ghost?" Ron frowned. "She hardly talks to anyone." "She might talk to Harry," Hermione mused. "Especially if she senses the ring's magic. Ghosts are often more perceptive about magical artifacts than living people." They reached the fat lady's portrait without encountering Filch or Mrs. Norris. After giving the password, Mimbulus Mimbletonia, they entered the common room, finding it mostly empty except for a few seventh years studying by the fire. If each founder had their own secret repository, Hermione continued, once they'd claimed a corner table away from others, it might explain why the records about Slytherin are so contradictory. Perhaps each founder preserved their own version of Hogwarts' early history. "So what we think we know comes from Gryffindor's perspective," Harry realized. "Because his legacy remained public while the others were hidden." "Exactly," Hermione nodded eagerly. "Historical revisionism happens in both Muggle and magical history. The victors, or in this case, the more publicly accessible accounts, shape the narrative." "Great, a history lesson," Ron groaned. "How does this help us now?" "It helps because it suggests we're dealing with something bigger than just Slytherin's chamber," Harry explained. "If all four founders left hidden legacies, then others might be searching for them too, not just Slytherins." "And the attack on the chamber?" Hermione's eyes widened. "What if someone is trying to destroy all the founders' hidden knowledge? Someone who doesn't want these alternative histories or advanced magic rediscovered?" The theory was disturbing but made a certain logical sense. If someone, Umbridge, or perhaps others in the Ministry, believed that certain magic should remain restricted, they might take extreme measures to ensure forgotten knowledge stayed forgotten. "We need to talk to the Grey Lady," Harry decided. "And we need to find out more about Blackthorn's background. His interest in the chamber seems scholarly, but that doesn't mean we can trust him completely." "I can research Ministry records about former unspeakables," Hermione offered. "Public information is limited, but there might be academic papers or conference presentations that mention him." "Good. Ron, can you have Fred and George keep an eye on the Marauders map? Track Umbridge's movements, especially late at night when she might be attempting to access the chamber." Ron nodded. "They'll do it if I tell them it's important. Don't need to give specific details. And I'll try to speak with the Grey Lady," Harry concluded. "If Ravenclaw did create her own knowledge repository, it might help us understand what we're dealing with." As they finalized their plans, Harry felt the invisible ring warm slightly on his finger. The sensation wasn't uncomfortable but felt like a gentle reminder of its presence, and perhaps a warning. The more they uncovered about the founder's secrets, the greater the risk became. But turning back was no longer an option. Too many others knew or suspected what he'd found. The only way forward was to learn more, understand better, and hope that knowledge would provide protection against whatever forces sought to keep Hogwarts' deepest secrets buried. Finding an opportunity to speak with the Grey Lady proved challenging. The Ravenclaw ghost was notoriously reclusive, appearing rarely and engaging with students even more infrequently. Harry spent 2 days watching the Marauders map during free periods, tracking her spectral movements through the castle. On the third evening, he spotted her gliding alone through the astronomy tower. Grabbing his invisibility cloak, he slipped out of Gryffindor Tower, making his way quickly through the silent corridors. The astronomy tower was deserted at this hour, its circular observation platform bathed in moonlight. The Grey Lady floated near the eastern battlements, her translucent form silvery against the night sky. Unlike most Hogwarts ghosts, who wore expressions reflecting their deaths, her face showed only a serene detachment from the world of the living. Harry removed his invisibility cloak, approaching slowly. "Excuse me, Lady Helena." The ghost turned, surprise briefly crossing her ethereal features. Few students knew her true name, Helena Ravenclaw, daughter of the founder. "Harry Potter," she acknowledged, her voice soft but carrying clearly. "You seek me out directly. How unusual." "I hoped you might answer some questions," Harry said respectfully. "About Hogwarts history. About the founders. Many seek such knowledge. Few deserve it." Her gaze drifted to Harry's hand where the invisible ring rested. "But you carry something of the founders already." Harry's eyes widened. "You can see it?" "Not see. Sense." Helena drifted closer. "The dead perceive magic differently. Your ring bears the essence of Salazar Slytherin's craft." "Then you know about the founders' hidden legacies," Harry realized. "Their secret repositories of knowledge." Helena's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in her ghostly eyes. "You have found Salazar's sanctuary." It wasn't a question. Harry nodded anyway. "The library beneath the Chamber of Secrets. But I think there's more. I think each founder created their own repository." "And what would you do with such knowledge, Harry Potter?" Helena asked, studying him intently. "Seek power. Fame. Advantage over your enemies." "I want to understand," Harry replied honestly. "The history we're taught doesn't match what I found in Slytherin's journals. I want to know the truth about Hogwarts, about magic itself." Helena was silent for a long moment, seeming to look through Harry rather than at him. Finally, she spoke. "My mother believed knowledge belonged to all who possessed the wisdom to use it properly. Godric believed courage should determine one's access to power. Helga thought patience and loyalty were the true measures of worthiness. And Salazar." Her voice softened. "Salazar believed in potential above all else. They each created a secret place, didn't they?" Harry pressed gently. "A repository for knowledge they couldn't agree on sharing openly." "The sanctuaries," Helena confirmed. "For spaces within Hogwarts, hidden from all but those each founder deemed worthy. My mother's haven of wisdom, Godric's crucible of courage, Helga's hearth of harmony, and Salazar's chamber of potential." "Chamber of potential?" Harry repeated. "Not secrets. History remembers what it chooses to remember," Helena said with a touch of bitterness. "Salazar named it for its purpose, to preserve magical potential that others feared to nurture. Later generations, fearing what they did not understand, renamed it to better suit their narrative." "And your mother's haven? Does it still exist?" Helena's form seemed to flicker slightly. "It waits for one who seeks knowledge for wisdom's sake, not merely for power or curiosity." "Can you tell me how to find it?" "I cannot give you what you have not earned," Helena replied. "But I can tell you this, each sanctuary responds to qualities its founder valued most. You found Salazar's through your potential, your gift of Parseltongue, yes, but more importantly, your capacity for understanding magic's deeper nature. So to find Ravenclaw's haven, one must demonstrate wisdom beyond mere intelligence," Helena finished. "Knowledge of when to learn, when to share, and when to keep silent." It wasn't the straightforward answer Harry had hoped for, but it was more than he'd expected. "Thank you, Lady Helena. One more question, if I may, do you know who might be trying to destroy these sanctuaries?" "Someone attacked Slytherin's chamber recently." The ghost's expression darkened. There have always been those who fear knowledge they cannot control. In my mother's time, it was religious zealots who burned magical texts. In your time, she drifted toward the battlements. Those who build their power upon controlling what others may learn will always seek to destroy sources of knowledge beyond their influence. The Ministry. Umbridge. Power structures change, the fear of uncontrolled knowledge does not. Helena began to fade from view. Be wary, Harry Potter. You have stepped into a conflict far older than Voldemort's rise. The battle between knowledge preserved and knowledge controlled has raged since Hogwarts' founding. Before she vanished completely, she added, "Speak with the friar about Helga's hearth. He keeps her confidence still, even in death." Then she was gone, leaving Harry alone on the moonlit tower with far more questions than answers. But one thing was clear, the chambers were under threat, and not just from Voldemort or Death Eaters. Someone within the established magical power structure wanted the Founder's knowledge to remain buried. Harry returned to Gryffindor Tower, his mind racing with implications. For sanctuaries, each containing a Founder's unique legacy. If they could locate all four, they might piece together the complete, unfiltered history of Hogwarts, and access magical knowledge that had been deliberately suppressed for centuries. But first, they needed to understand who was trying to destroy that knowledge, and why. Umbridge has been meeting with someone from the Department of Mysteries, Hermione announced in a hushed voice the next morning at breakfast. She spread the Daily Prophet between them, pointing to a small article tucked in the corner of the third page. Senior Undersecretary Dolores Umbridge conferred with Unspeakable Cassius Thornfield regarding educational security measures at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Harry read quietly. The consultation follows reports of unauthorized magical experimentation within the historic institution. Unauthorized magical experimentation? Ron repeated skeptically. That's what they're calling it. It's code, Hermione explained. The Ministry doesn't want to openly admit they're searching for Founder artifacts or chambers. But look at the Unspeakable's name, Thornfield. Similar to Blackthorn, Harry realized. Relative? Brother, according to my research. Celius and Cassius Blackthorn were both Unspeakables until Celius left to teach. They reportedly had a significant disagreement about research ethics that led to their professional split. So Blackthorn's brother is working with Umbridge, Harry mused. That complicates things. It gets worse, Hermione continued, flipping through her notes. Cassius Blackthorn specializes in magical containment and suppression, specifically, methods for neutralizing ancient enchantments that conflict with modern Ministry regulations. He's a magical exterminator, Ron said bluntly. The Ministry sends him to destroy magic they can't control. Or don't want others to access, Harry added, remembering Helena Ravenclaw's warning about those who built power by controlling knowledge. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the morning mail. Hundreds of owls swooped into the great hall, delivering letters and packages. To Harry's surprise, a handsome eagle owl landed beside his plate, offering a small, unmarked envelope. Harry accepted it cautiously, checking for curses before opening it. Inside was a brief note written in elegant script, "Library repaired. Original attacker identified. Meet in your practice room after dinner. Crucial information to share." C.B. Blackthorn, Harry murmured, showing Ron and Hermione the note. The chambers restored. Could be a trap, Ron warned. The practice room must mean the room of requirement, Hermione reasoned. Neutral territory where we can control the environment. I think we should go, Harry decided. But prepared for trouble. And we need to tell the DA to skip tonight's meeting, just in case. Throughout the day, they discreetly informed DA members that the evening's practice was cancelled. Most accepted the change without question, though Cho gave Harry a knowing look that suggested she suspected there was more to the story. In potions, Harry noticed Draco watching him with poorly disguised curiosity. When Snape paired them for brewing, Malfoy used the opportunity to speak privately. Something's happening, he muttered while chopping valerian roots. My father sent another letter. The Dark Lord is extremely interested in recent magical disturbances at Hogwarts. Tell me something I don't know, Harry replied, keeping his voice low. How about this? Umbridge has requested special authority from the Ministry to use magical detection methods normally restricted to Gringotts security. Methods designed to locate hidden enchantments regardless of concealment spells. Harry nearly dropped his silver knife. When? Application was submitted yesterday. Approval expected within the week. Draco glanced nervously at Snape, who was berating Neville across the room. I've kept my part of our agreement, Potter. No one from my side knows what we found or where it is. I appreciate that, Harry said, and was surprised to realize he meant it. We're meeting Blackthorn tonight. The chamber's been restored. Draco's eyes widened slightly. Where? Room of requirement. After dinner. I should be there, Draco insisted. If this involves Slytherin's legacy, fine, Harry conceded. But come alone, and be careful not to be followed. The rest of the day passed with agonizing slowness. By dinner, Harry's nerves were stretched taut with anticipation and wariness. He picked at his food without appetite, constantly scanning the staff table where Umbridge sat with a self-satisfied smile that made his skin crawl. Blackthorn was notably absent. I don't like this, Ron muttered. First he sends a cryptic note, then doesn't show for dinner. We proceed as planned, Harry decided. But with extreme caution. After dinner, they made their way to the 7th floor corridor, Harry checking the Marauder's map frequently to ensure they weren't followed. The castle seemed unusually quiet, with fewer prefects patrolling than normal, another detail that raised Harry's suspicions. They reached the blank wall opposite the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. Harry paced 3 times, focusing intently. We need a secure meeting place where we can't be overheard or interrupted, with warning if anyone approaches. The door materialized, smaller and sturdier than the one that usually appeared for DA meetings. Inside, they found a compact room with a round table surrounded by 6 chairs. The walls were lined with shelves containing defensive magical objects, and a large enchanted map of Hogwarts covered one wall, showing the corridors immediately surrounding their location. Nice touch with the map, Ron said appreciatively. I didn't specifically ask for that, Harry replied, studying the magical display with surprise. The room must have provided what it thought we needed. They settled at the table, wands ready but not drawn, waiting for Blackthorn and potentially Malfoy to arrive. The minutes stretched uncomfortably until the enchanted map showed a lone figure approaching from the south corridor. The door opened to reveal not Blackthorn but Draco, looking unusually tense. Potter, he acknowledged, closing the door firmly behind him. Weasley. Granger. Where's Blackthorn? Harry asked as Draco took a seat. No idea. Thought he'd be here already. The map suddenly showed another figure approaching rapidly from the east corridor, moving too quickly for normal walking. The door burst open, and Professor Blackthorn stumbled in, his robes singed and torn, a bloody gash across his cheek. Bar the door, he gasped. Quickly. Harry leapt up, sealing the entrance with every locking charm he knew while Hermione helped Blackthorn to a chair. The professor collapsed into it, breathing heavily. What happened? Harry demanded. Ambush, Blackthorn managed between breaths. My brother, knew I was meeting you, tried to stop me. Cassius attacked you? Hermione asked, conjuring a cloth to press against his bleeding cheek. Not directly, sent Ministry security, claiming I was compromised. Blackthorn winced as he touched his side, revealing more blood soaking through his robes. Had to fight my way out, came straight here. You need the hospital wing, Ron said. No time, Blackthorn shook his head firmly. They'll look there first. Need to tell you, what I've discovered. He straightened with visible effort. The attack on Slytherin's chamber, it wasn't just about destroying knowledge. They're searching for something specific. Something Slytherin hid that the Ministry has been seeking for centuries. What? Harry asked. The Codex Arcanum, Blackthorn replied. A book containing the fundamental principles of magic creation, not just spellcrafting, but the actual formation of new magical effects. The theoretical framework for inventing entirely new forms of magic. That's impossible, Hermione breathed. Magic can be discovered and channeled, but not created from nothing. It's a fundamental principle of magical theory. A principle established by the Ministry to discourage experimentation, Blackthorn countered. But the founders knew differently. They understood magic more deeply than modern wizards can imagine. The Codex contains their combined knowledge of magical creation, knowledge deemed too dangerous for public access. And the Ministry thinks it's in Slytherin's chamber? Harry asked. Not exactly. They believe each founder created 1/4 of the Codex, hiding their portion in their personal sanctuaries. Only by combining all 4 sections can the complete knowledge be accessed. Draco leaned forward. My father mentioned something about this once, a legendary book the Dark Lord sought during his first rise to power. He called it, the Key to Magical Sovereignty. Precisely, Blackthorn nodded grimly. Whoever possesses the complete codex could theoretically create new forms of magic that existing countermeasures couldn't block, spells without recognized signatures, curses without standard magical traces. It would make existing defensive magic obsolete, Harry realized. And render the Ministry's regulatory systems useless, Blackthorn confirmed. Which is why they've spent centuries ensuring it remains fragmented and hidden. My brother has dedicated his career to locating and containing founder artifacts that might lead to the Codex pieces. But something's changed, Hermione observed shrewdly. The Ministry's suddenly urgent about finding it now. Why? Blackthorn's expression darkened. Because of Voldemort's return, which they publicly deny while privately preparing for. They fear he'll find the Codex first, creating magic they cannot counter or control. And they're willing to destroy centuries of knowledge to prevent that, Harry said bitterly. Knowledge has always frightened those in power, Blackthorn replied. But there's more. My brother isn't just working with the Ministry. He's been secretly meeting with known Death Eater contacts. He's playing both sides, Ron concluded. Or setting them against each other while pursuing his own agenda, Blackthorn suggested. Cassius always believed magical knowledge should be restricted to an elite few, specifically, those with the proper training, to use it responsibly. The room fell silent as they absorbed these revelations. Harry twisted Slytherin's ring thoughtfully, its presence on his finger a constant reminder of what was at stake. So what do we do? He finally asked. If both the Ministry and Voldemort are searching for the Codex pieces. We find them first, Blackthorn said simply. Starting with confirming whether Slytherin's portion is actually in his chamber. I suspect it's hidden behind additional protections, accessible only to someone wearing his ring. And the other founders' portions? Hermione asked. We'll need to locate their sanctuaries. I've spent decades researching possible locations based on historical references and magical traces, but without someone connected to each founder's legacy, the barriers have proven impenetrable. The Grey Lady mentioned something about this, Harry remembered. She called them havens or hearths, places that respond to qualities each founder valued most. Blackthorn looked impressed. You spoke with Helena Ravenclaw. She rarely engages with students. She seemed to know about the ring, Harry explained. She said I should speak with the Fat Friar about Hufflepuff's hearth. Logical connections, Blackthorn nodded. The house ghosts would have been selected partly for their connections to the founders. Nearly Headless Nick for Gryffindor, the Baron for Slytherin. So we talked to the ghosts, find the other sanctuaries, locate the Codex pieces before anyone else, Ron summarized. Simple, really. Hardly simple, Draco scoffed. We'll be working against both the Ministry and the Dark Lord, with Umbridge watching our every move. Which is why we need to act quickly, Blackthorn urged. My brother's attack tonight suggests he knows I've discovered something significant. It won't take him long to convince the Ministry to authorize more aggressive measures. The enchanted map suddenly flashed red, showing multiple figures converging on their corridor from different directions. "They've found me," Blackthorn said grimly, standing despite his injuries. "I've led them right to you." "We need to get out of here," Harry decided, checking the map for clear paths. The room can create multiple exits if needed. As if responding to his thought, a door appeared in the back wall, different from the one they'd entered through. "That should lead to the 5th-floor corridor near the prefect's bathroom," Harry said. "Professor, you should go first. We'll create a diversion." Blackthorn shook his head. "Too risky. They're expecting me to flee. If I surrender myself, claiming I acted alone in researching forbidden knowledge, it might draw attention away from you four." "That's mad," Ron protested. "They'll throw you in Azkaban." "Not without due process," Blackthorn replied. "I have colleagues who'll ensure I receive a proper hearing. And in the meantime, you can continue our work without suspicion falling immediately on you." The map showed the figures, at least 6 of them, stopping outside their door, apparently discussing strategy. "There's no time to argue," Blackthorn said firmly. "Mr. Potter, the ring is key to accessing Slytherin's true legacy. Guard it carefully, and remember, the Codex is important, but the Founder's complete knowledge is the greater treasure. Don't fixate on one artifact at the cost of their broader wisdom." Before Harry could respond, Blackthorn cast a complex spell that caused his wounds to vanish, though Harry suspected it was merely a glamour rather than actual healing. He straightened his robes and assumed a dignified posture. "I'll create a distraction. The 4 of you take the back exit and return to your dormitories separately. Avoid being seen together for the next few days." With that, he strode to the main door, cancelled Harry's locking charms with surprising ease, and stepped into the corridor with his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Gentlemen," they heard him say calmly. "I've been expecting you. There's no need for wands, I'll come quietly." Multiple voices responded, too muffled to make out clearly. Harry gestured urgently to the others, and they slipped through the back door just as they heard Blackthorn being led away, his voice fading as he engaged his captors in what sounded like a deliberately complex academic argument about magical jurisdiction. The 5th-floor corridor was deserted, just as Harry had hoped. They paused only long enough to verify no one was nearby before splitting up as Blackthorn had advised, Ron and Hermione heading directly toward Gryffindor Tower while Harry and Draco took longer routes to their respective dormitories. "Potter," Draco said quietly before they parted. "Whatever else happens, Slytherin's legacy needs to be preserved. All of it, not just the parts that serve anyone's agenda." "Agreed," Harry replied, surprised by Malfoy's sincerity. "We'll continue this tomorrow." Small study group in the library after classes, nothing suspicious about that. Draco nodded and disappeared down a side passage toward the dungeons. Harry took a different route, mind racing with everything they'd learned. The Codex Arcanum, a book of magical creation so powerful that both the Ministry and Voldemort sought it desperately. And now Blackthorn had sacrificed his freedom to give them time to find it first. The question was, what would they do with it once they found it? Knowledge that powerful could change the wizarding world forever, for better or worse, depending on who controlled it. As Harry slipped back into Gryffindor Tower, he felt the weight of Slytherin's ring on his finger and the even heavier weight of responsibility that came with it. He'd set out to explore a hidden library and instead found himself at the center of a centuries-old struggle for control of magic's deepest secrets. And somewhere in Hogwarts, 3 more sanctuaries waited to be discovered, each containing knowledge that had been deliberately hidden from the wizarding world for 1,000 years. The hunt for the Founder's true legacy had only just begun. Chapter 3, Legacy of Light and Shadow. The next morning at breakfast, the news spread through the Great Hall like fiendfire. "Professor Blackthorn's been suspended," Seamus Finnegan announced, dropping into the seat beside Harry with his usual lack of ceremony. "Ministry's taken him into custody." Something about unauthorized magical research and endangering students. Ron choked on his pumpkin juice. Hermione's face went pale. What exactly did they say? Harry asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Seamus shrugged. Just that he was removed last night for conduct unbecoming a Hogwarts professor. Umbridge made the announcement to the prefects this morning. She's taking over defense classes until they find a replacement. Harry exchanged grim looks with Ron and Hermione. Blackthorn's sacrifice had worked, for now. The Ministry's attention was focused on him, not on 4 students who might know about Slytherin's chamber. Across the hall, Draco caught Harry's eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. Not here, the gesture said. Too many eyes. Umbridge entered the great hall with a smug expression that made Harry's stomach churn. She took her place at the staff table, leaning over to whisper something to Professor McGonagall, who stiffened visibly in response. Right, Harry muttered under his breath. Library after breakfast. We need to talk. They finished eating quickly and made their way to the library, choosing a table in the far corner behind the restricted section where Madame Pants rarely ventured. Draco joined them a few minutes later, looking more tense than Harry had ever seen him. My father sent another owl this morning, he said without preamble, keeping his voice low. The Ministry's questioning Blackthorn under Veritaserum. They want to know everything he discovered about Founder artifacts. Will he tell them? Hermione asked worriedly. He won't have a choice with Veritaserum, Ron pointed out. Actually, he might, Harry said, remembering something from Slytherin's books. Advanced occlumency can create false memories that Veritaserum accepts as truth. If Blackthorn's as skilled as I think. Even so, time's running out, Draco interrupted. The Dark Lord knows about the Codex now. My father's letter made that clear. He's ordered his followers to find it at any cost. So we have 2 enemies now, Ron summarized. The Ministry wants to destroy it, Voldemort wants to use it, and we're stuck in the middle. 3 enemies, actually, Hermione corrected. Whoever attacked the chamber might be working independently. Blackthorn said his brother was meeting with Death Eaters, but that doesn't mean he's loyal to Voldemort. Harry leaned forward, lowering his voice further. We need to find the other sanctuaries. Today. Starting with Hufflepuff's hearth, the Fat Friar might know something. Good luck with that, Ron muttered. He's always going on about forgiveness and second chances. Not exactly helpful for finding hidden chambers. Actually, Hermione said thoughtfully, that might be exactly the point. Hufflepuff valued loyalty, patience, and fairness. Her sanctuary might require demonstrating those qualities. Which means we need to talk to the friar, Harry concluded. But carefully. We can't let anyone suspect what we're really asking. They split up to avoid drawing attention. Harry and Hermione would approach the Fat Friar after Charms class, while Ron and Draco would search the library for any references to Hufflepuff artifacts or hidden spaces. It was an uneasy alliance, but necessity made strange allies. Charms class dragged interminably. Flitwick had them practicing cheering charms, which resulted in an uncomfortably giddy atmosphere that did nothing for Harry's nerves. When the bell finally rang, he and Hermione made their way to the second-floor corridor where the Fat Friar was often found floating near a stained glass window depicting Helga Hufflepuff herself. The ghost was indeed there, humming a cheerful tune as he admired the sunlight streaming through the colored glass. Excuse me, Friar. Hermione began politely. The Fat Friar turned, his round face breaking into a welcoming smile. Ah, Miss Granger. And Mr. Potter. How delightful to see you both. Are you enjoying this splendid autumn day? It's very nice, Harry agreed. We were wondering if you could tell us about Helga Hufflepuff. For a history project. The Friar's smile widened. Dear Helga. The kindest of the founders, without question. While the others debated who was worthy of magical education, she believed every magical child deserved a place at Hogwarts. We heard she created a special place within the castle, Hermione ventured carefully. A hearth of harmony? The friar's cheerful expression didn't change, but his eyes grew more thoughtful. Ah, you've been speaking with Helena Ravenclaw, I see. Yes, Helga did create such a place. A sanctuary where all were welcome, regardless of house or heritage. Does it still exist? Harry asked. Of course. Nothing Helga built was meant to be temporary. The friar drifted closer. But her hearth reveals itself only to those who demonstrate the qualities she valued most. Loyalty not just to friends, but to principles. Patience in seeking understanding. Fairness in judgment. How would someone demonstrate those things? Hermione asked. By action, not by claim, the friar replied. Helga believed deeds spoke louder than words or bloodlines. She welcomed the house elves when others saw them only as servants. She defended Muggle-born students when others questioned their place. She built the kitchens beneath the Great Hall so that all might be fed equally. The ghost studied them both. If you seek her hearth, look not for hidden doors or secret passwords, but for places where her values are embodied. Where loyalty is rewarded, patience is honored, and fairness prevails. With that cryptic advice, the friar resumed his humming and drifted through the wall, leaving Harry and Hermione with more questions than answers. Well, that was helpful and not helpful at the same time, Harry sighed. It's a clue, Hermione insisted. Places where Hufflepuff's values are embodied. The kitchens, obviously. Maybe the greenhouses. Professor Sprout's a Hufflepuff, and she embodies those qualities. Or the hospital wing, Harry suggested. Madame Pomfrey treats everyone equally, no matter their house. They rejoined Ron and Draco in the library, sharing what they'd learned. Places where fairness and loyalty matter, Ron repeated. That's half the castle. Not necessarily, Hermione argued. Think symbolically. The kitchens represent Hufflepuff's care for all students. The hospital wing represents her healing nature. The greenhouses represent her connection to growth and nurturing. Draco, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. There's a portrait of Helga Hufflepuff in the basement corridor near the kitchens. My father mentioned it once, said it was noteworthy because it never moves, unlike most portraits. That's unusual, Hermione agreed. Most founder portraits have multiple locations they can move between. Worth checking, Harry decided. Tonight after curfew. They spent the rest of the day in tense anticipation. Umbridge taught their defense class, which consisted entirely of reading Chapter 16 of Defensive Magical Theory aloud while she watched them with her toad-like smile. Harry could feel her eyes lingering on him, and he carefully maintained the mental barriers he'd learned from Slytherin's texts, visualizing his thoughts organized in Hogwarts architecture with sensitive information hidden in the Chamber of Secrets equivalent. After dinner, they waited until the common room emptied before gathering under Harry's invisibility cloak. Navigating 4 people under one cloak was challenging, but they'd grown practiced at it over the years. The basement corridors were dimly lit and deserted at this hour. They found the portrait of Helga Hufflepuff exactly where Draco had described, a life-sized painting showing the founder standing before a massive fireplace, stirring a large cauldron. Unlike most magical portraits, this one was completely still, as if frozen in time. "Hello?" Harry whispered, dropping the cloak. The portrait remained motionless. Hermione stepped closer, examining the frame. There's an inscription: warmth for all who seek it, sustenance for all who need it, shelter for all who deserve it. That sounds like Hufflepuff, Ron noted. Harry studied the portrait more carefully. Helga Hufflepuff was depicted as a kind-faced witch with a gentle smile, her attention focused on the cauldron she stirred. The fireplace behind her blazed with realistic-looking flames, and something about those flames seemed. "Look at the fire," Harry said suddenly. "It's moving." He was right. While everything else in the portrait was frozen, the flames in the fireplace flickered and danced as if real. "Touch it," Draco suggested. The flames. Harry reached out tentatively, expecting to feel only canvas and paint. Instead, his fingers passed through the portrait as if through a curtain of warm air. The sensation was similar to passing through the barrier to platform 9 3/4. Merlin's beard, Ron breathed. Harry pushed his hand further, then his arm, until half his body was through the portrait. On the other side, he could see a stone corridor lit by torches. "It's a passage," he announced, stepping completely through. The others followed quickly. The corridor beyond was unlike any part of Hogwarts Harry had seen. The walls were made of warm, honey-colored stone, and the air smelled of baking bread and dried herbs. Torches burned in wrought iron sconces, casting a golden light that made everything seem welcoming and safe. They followed the corridor as it curved gently downward, the temperature growing pleasantly warm. After about 50 yards, it opened into a circular chamber that took Harry's breath away. Helga Hufflepuff's hearth was exactly that, a massive, round room centered on an enormous stone fireplace large enough to stand in. Flames crackled cheerfully in the hearth, but gave off no smoke. Around the room, comfortable-looking armchairs and sofas were arranged in conversational groupings. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes bound in earthy tones of brown, green, and gold. But what truly distinguished this chamber from Slytherin's library was its atmosphere. Where Slytherin's space had felt like a repository of secrets, this felt like a haven. The magic here was gentle but strong, like the earth itself. "Wow," Ron said simply, looking around in awe. Hermione moved immediately to the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines. "These are different from Slytherin's collection. Herbology, healing magic, magical creature care, household charms. Practical magic," Harry observed. "Useful knowledge." Draco looked uncomfortable, as if the warmth and welcome of the place conflicted with everything he'd been taught about Hufflepuff House. "It's cozy." "Cozy?" Ron snorted. "It's brilliant is what it is." Harry approached the central hearth. Carved into the stone mantel were words, "Kindness is not weakness. Patience is not passivity. Loyalty is not blindness. True strength lies in balance." "Helga's philosophy," Hermione said, joining him. "It's beautiful." They explored the chamber more thoroughly. Unlike Slytherin's library, which had felt like a place for solitary study, this space was clearly designed for community. A large wooden table near one wall held what looked like unfinished potions projects and herb-drying racks. Another area had comfortable cushions arranged around a low table, perfect for group study or conversation. "Look at this," Draco called from a shelf near the back. He held up a thick book bound in brown leather. "Magical Agriculture, Advanced Techniques for Enchanted Cultivation." "Let me see that," Hermione said, taking the book with reverence. "This is a lost text. Professor Sprout mentioned it once, said only fragments survived." As she paged through it, something slipped from between the pages, a folded piece of parchment, old but well preserved. Hermione unfolded it carefully, revealing a diagram of Hogwarts with 4 locations marked. "It's a map," she breathed. "Of all 4 sanctuaries." They gathered around as she spread the parchment on the central table. The diagram clearly showed Hogwarts with 4 symbols, a serpent for Slytherin's chamber in the dungeons, a badger for Hufflepuff's hearth in the basement, an eagle for Ravenclaw's haven in a tower, and a lion for Gryffindor's crucible somewhere on the 7th floor. Each founder marked their own sanctuary, Harry realized. And Hufflepuff kept a record of all of them. "Look," Ron pointed. "There are lines connecting them. Like pathways. Magical conduits," Hermione said excitedly. "The sanctuaries are connected. They form a magical circuit through Hogwarts." Draco traced the line from Slytherin's chamber to Hufflepuff's hearth. "If they're connected, could we travel between them without going through the main castle?" "Possibly," Harry said, his mind racing. "But we'd need access to all 4 to complete the circuit." "Ravenclaw's haven is in a tower," Hermione noted, studying the map more closely. The eagle symbol is right where the astronomy tower should be. And Gryffindor's crucible. Ron frowned. That's on the 7th floor, but not where the room of requirement is. It's closer to the North Tower. We need to find them both, Harry decided. But carefully. If the Ministry or Voldemort's followers are watching. A sudden chill swept through the chamber, extinguishing several torches. The cheerful fire in the hearth dimmed, casting long shadows. What was that? Ron whispered, drawing his wand. Harry felt it too, a familiar, oppressive magic that made his scar prickle. Someone's trying to breach the wards. From outside. They moved to defensive positions, wands raised. The chill deepened, and frost began to form on the stone walls despite the hearth's warmth. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and precise, "I know you're in there, Potter. And I know what you found." Harry recognized that voice, Cassius Blackthorn, Celius's brother. "Show yourself." Harry called, his grip tightening on his wand. A section of the wall shimmered like heat haze, then dissolved to reveal a tall, thin man who looked like an older, harder version of their former defense professor. Cassius Blackthorn wore unspeakable robes of deep gray, and his eyes held none of his brother's scholarly curiosity, only cold calculation. "Impressive," Blackthorn said, his gaze sweeping the chamber. "Hufflepuff's hearth. I've been searching for this place for 20 years. How did you find it?" Hermione demanded. "Tracking spells on my brother's belongings," Blackthorn replied dismissively. "He visited this corridor recently. I merely followed the residual magic." His eyes fixed on Harry. "And you led me right to it. How convenient." "We're not giving you anything," Harry said firmly. Blackthorn's smile was thin and humorless. "You misunderstand. I'm not here to take anything. I'm here to ensure certain knowledge remains, contained." He raised his wand, and the temperature dropped further. Ice crystals formed in the air, and the books on the shelves began to frost over. "Stop!" Hermione cried. "You'll destroy centuries of knowledge." "Some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve," Blackthorn said coldly. "The Codex Arcanum cannot be allowed to fall into the wrong hands." "Like yours?" Ron challenged. "Like anyone's," Blackthorn corrected. "My brother was a fool to think this knowledge could be shared responsibly. Magic of this magnitude must be controlled by those trained to understand its dangers." He began an incantation in a language Harry didn't recognize, something ancient and harsh that made the air vibrate unpleasantly. Harry reacted instinctively, casting a shield charm not in front of himself but around the entire chamber. "Protego tot alum." The shield formed just as Blackthorn completed his spell. A wave of nullifying magic struck Harry's barrier, causing it to shimmer violently but hold. Blackthorn looked momentarily surprised. "Advanced wardcraft. My brother taught you well." "He didn't teach me that," Harry said through gritted teeth, maintaining the shield. "I learned it from Slytherin's books." "Fascinating," Blackthorn murmured, his analytical mind apparently overriding his destructive intent for a moment. "The ring accepts you, the books teach you. You truly are Slytherin's heir in the way that matters." He lowered his wand slightly. "Join me, Potter. Help me contain this knowledge properly. Together, we could ensure it's preserved but controlled, available only to those who prove themselves worthy through proper channels." "I've seen what proper channels look like," Harry retorted. "Umbridge. Fudge. People who want to control magic to control people." "A necessary precaution," Blackthorn insisted. "Unregulated magic leads to dark lords and wars. Controlled magic leads to order and progress." "Whose order?" Hermione challenged. "Whose progress?" "Yours." Before Blackthorn could respond, Draco stepped forward. "He's stalling. Reinforcements are probably on the way." Blackthorn's eyes narrowed. "Malfoy's son." Your father will be disappointed to learn you've allied with Potter. My father's disappointed in a lot of things lately, Draco replied, his voice steadier than Harry expected. Starting with discovering everything he believed about pureblood superiority is based on distorted history. For the first time, Blackthorn looked genuinely unsettled. You've read the Founder's original writings. We all have, Harry said. And we're not letting you destroy them. Blackthorn's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. He raised his wand again, this time with clear lethal intent. But before he could cast, the portrait entrance shimmered, and 3 figures burst into the chamber, Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick, and, to Harry's shock, Professor Snape. Cassius Blackthorn. McGonagall's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Lower your wand immediately. Blackthorn didn't lower his wand, but he didn't complete his spell either. Minerva. This doesn't concern you. Everything that happens at Hogwarts concerns me, she retorted, her own wand raised and ready. Especially when an unspeakable attacks students in a Founder's sanctuary. Flitwick moved to position himself between Blackthorn and the students, his short stature belying his formidable magical power. The wards alerted us to unauthorized destructive magic. You know Founder spaces are protected under Hogwarts Charter, Cassius. Snape said nothing, but his dark eyes missed nothing, the frost on the walls, the defensive positions of the students, the map still spread on the table. Blackthorn's calculating mind was clearly weighing options. He was outnumbered by 3 powerful professors, one of whom was a former dueling champion. These children have accessed forbidden knowledge, he said, trying a different approach. Knowledge that threatens magical stability. What knowledge would that be, exactly? Snape asked silkily. And how, precisely, does it threaten stability? The Codex Arcanum, Blackthorn said. They're searching for it. McGonagall's eyes widened slightly, but her wand didn't waver. A legend. Unproven. Not according to my brother's research. And not according to what these students have already found. Blackthorn gestured to the chamber around them. 2 Founder sanctuaries located in as many weeks. They're following a trail, Minerva. One that could lead to the most dangerous magical text ever created. Or to a greater understanding of magic itself, Hermione spoke up bravely. The Founders didn't hide knowledge because it was dangerous. They hid it because later generations feared what they didn't understand. Spoken like a true academic, Blackthorn said with a hint of genuine respect. But you're wrong. Some knowledge is dangerous. The ability to create entirely new forms of magic. To bypass all existing magical defenses. That power in the wrong hands. Is exactly why we can't let you destroy it, Harry finished. Or control it. Or decide who's worthy to access it. McGonagall studied Harry for a long moment, then turned back to Blackthorn. You will leave Hogwarts immediately, Cassius. And you will not return without the express permission of the Board of Governors and the headmaster. And if I refuse? Then we will remove you, Flitwick said simply. And I assure you, it won't be pleasant. Blackthorn's eyes darted between the professors, the students, and the exit. After a tense silence, he lowered his wand. This isn't over. The Ministry will hear about this. About the unauthorized magic, the Founder artifacts, the threat to magical security. Tell them whatever you wish, McGonagall said coldly. But leave. Now. With one last calculating look at Harry, Cassius Blackthorn turned and disappeared through the portrait entrance. The moment he was gone, the chamber warmed again, the frost melting from the walls and books. McGonagall turned to the students, her expression unreadable. Explain. Everything. They did, starting with Harry's discovery of Slytherin's chamber, the library within, Slytherin's journals that contradicted accepted history, the ring, the attack on the chamber, their meeting with the Grey Lady and Fat Friar, and finally their discovery of Hufflepuff's hearth. The professors listened without interruption, their expressions growing increasingly grave. When they finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Snape spoke. "The ring. Show me." Reluctantly, Harry removed the disillusionment charm. Snape examined it without touching, his face a mask of concentration. "Salazar's work, undoubtedly," he murmured. "Keyed to magical affinity rather than bloodline. Remarkable." "You believe their story, Severus?" McGonagall asked. "I believe Potter has indeed accessed founder magic," Snape replied. "The improvements in his spellcasting, his sudden understanding of advanced magical theory. These are not the result of normal study." Flitwick was examining the map they'd found. "This is genuine founder magic. The parchment, the ink, the preservation charms. This hasn't been touched in centuries." McGonagall sighed, looking suddenly older. "Why didn't you come to us immediately?" "We weren't sure who to trust," Harry admitted. "Professor Blackthorne, Celius, I mean, warned us that the Ministry might try to destroy the knowledge. And with Umbridge watching everything." "Professor Blackthorne is currently being held by the Ministry," McGonagall informed them. "He surrendered himself to draw attention away from you. A brave but foolish act." "He protected us," Hermione said. "He believed the knowledge should be preserved, not destroyed or controlled." "And what do you believe should be done with it?" Snape asked, his dark eyes boring into Harry's. "I think." Harry chose his words carefully. "I think the founders hid this knowledge because they couldn't agree on who should have access to it. But they didn't destroy it. They preserved it, hoping future generations would be wiser. Or more capable of handling it," Flitwick added thoughtfully. "Precisely," Hermione jumped in. "The knowledge in Slytherin's chamber isn't dark magic. It's advanced magical theory. The knowledge here in Hufflepuff's hearth is practical magic for healing and nurturing. It's not dangerous, it's useful. Unless it leads to the Codex Arcanum," McGonagall pointed out. "Which, if the legends are true, could indeed be dangerous." "All knowledge can be dangerous," Harry argued. "But keeping people ignorant hasn't stopped Dark Lords. Voldemort found plenty of dark magic without founder knowledge." The use of Voldemort's name made both McGonagall and Flitwick flinch slightly, but Snape's expression remained impassive. "Potter has a point," Snape said unexpectedly. "The Dark Lord's power comes from forbidden knowledge he discovered independently. Restricting knowledge doesn't prevent its misuse, it merely creates an imbalance between those who follow rules and those who don't." McGonagall looked at each of them in turn, Harry, Ron, Hermione, even Draco, who had remained silent throughout the explanation. "You intend to find the remaining sanctuaries?" "Yes," Harry confirmed. "And the Codex, if it exists. But not to use it. To protect it from people like Cassius Blackthorne and Voldemort." "An ambitious goal for students," Flitwick said, but he sounded more impressed than disapproving. "You cannot do this alone," McGonagall stated. "If the Ministry and the Dark Lord are both seeking these artifacts, then we need to move quickly," Harry finished. "Before they find them first." After another long silence, McGonagall nodded slowly. "Very well. We will help you, discreetly. But there are conditions." "Anything," Harry agreed immediately. "First, you will not attempt to enter the remaining sanctuaries without professor supervision. The dangers are too great. Second," Flitwick added, "any knowledge you discover will be documented and studied properly before any decisions are made about its dissemination. Third," Snape said, his voice cold, "Malfoy will be monitored closely." Draco stiffened but didn't protest. "Agreed," Harry said for all of them. "Then we begin tonight," McGonagall decided. "Ravenclaw's Haven is our next objective. According to your map, it's in the astronomy tower, but hidden from normal view. Helena Ravenclaw said it requires wisdom to access," Hermione remembered. "Not just intelligence, but wisdom, knowing when to learn, when to share, when to keep silent." "Then we had best prepare," Flitwick said. Meet us in the astronomy tower at midnight. And for Merlin's sake, don't get caught. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Draco returned to their common rooms separately, trying to act normally despite the monumental task ahead. At 5 minutes to midnight, they gathered at the base of the astronomy tower. McGonagall, Flitwick, and Snape were already there, wands drawn and watchful. No sign of Umbridge or her associates, McGonagall reported. But we must be quick. They ascended the spiral staircase to the observation platform at the top of the tower. The night was clear and cold, stars glittering brilliantly in the moonless sky. According to the map, the entrance should be here, Hermione said, studying the parchment in the light of her wand. But I don't see anything. Ravenclaw valued wisdom, Flitwick mused. Perhaps the entrance requires a demonstration of wisdom rather than a password. Harry remembered Helena's words, one must demonstrate wisdom beyond mere intelligence. But how did one demonstrate wisdom? Wisdom is knowing what you don't know, Hermione said thoughtfully. And when to ask for help. She turned to the professors. We don't know how to find the entrance. Can you help us? As soon as she asked, a section of the stone wall shimmered, revealing a door that hadn't been there before. Carved into its surface was an eagle with wings spread, and beneath it, the words, "The first step to wisdom is admitting ignorance." Well done, Miss Granger, Flitwick said approvingly. The door had no handle or keyhole. Instead, there was a single word carved at its center, question. A question must be asked to enter, McGonagall realized. But what question? Not just any question, Snape said. A wise question. One that demonstrates true seeking of understanding. They fell silent, thinking. After a moment, Draco spoke unexpectedly. How do we ensure knowledge serves all, not just the powerful? The door remained closed. Ron tried. What did the founders disagree about that was important enough to hide their knowledge? Still nothing. Harry thought about everything they'd discovered, the distorted history, the hidden knowledge, the struggle between preservation and control. Finally, he asked, how do we honor the founders' legacy without repeating their mistakes? The eagle carving glowed blue, and the door swung inward silently. They entered a space that took Harry's breath away. Ravenclaw's haven was a circular library like Slytherin's, but where Slytherins had felt secretive and serious, this one felt expansive and luminous. The ceiling was enchanted to show the night sky, but with constellations that moved and shifted in patterns Harry didn't recognize. Books floated gently through the air, arranging themselves on shelves that reached toward the starry ceiling. At the room's center stood a statue of Rowena Ravenclaw, her stone face thoughtful and kind rather than stern. In her hands, she held an open book, and carved on its pages were the words, "Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure." This is incredible, Hermione breathed, watching a flock of parchment birds fly from one shelf to another, carrying scrolls between them. Organized knowledge, Flitwick said with obvious delight. Self-maintaining, self-cataloging. The ultimate library. They spread out to explore. Harry noticed that the books here were organized differently than in Slytherin's library, not by subject but by concept. One section was labeled The Nature of Magic, another, The Ethics of Power, another, The History of Thought. Draco approached a shelf marked Blood, Heritage, and Magical Affinity. He pulled down a volume, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he read. These contradict everything, he murmured. Ravenclaw's research shows magical ability isn't inherited in simple patterns. It can skip generations, appear spontaneously, strengthen or weaken based on environment and training. Exactly, Hermione said, joining him. The pureblood ideology isn't just prejudiced, it's scientifically inaccurate according to the founders' own research. McGonagall was examining a different section. Advanced Transfiguration Theory. Techniques I've never seen, approaches that solve problems I've struggled with for decades. Snape had found the potions section. Revolutionary, he said, and from Snape, that was high praise indeed. Alchemical principles applied to potion craft. Methods for stabilizing volatile interactions. As they explored, Harry noticed something odd. The floating books seemed to be arranging themselves into a pattern around the central statue. They formed a spiral leading upward to a platform that hadn't been visible when they entered. "There's something up there," he said, pointing. The spiral of books shifted, creating a staircase of floating volumes. Harry climbed carefully, the books firm beneath his feet despite their apparent fragility. The platform held a single pedestal with a crystal case. Inside the case rested a book unlike any Harry had ever seen. Its cover seemed to be made of shifting light, and the pages glowed with soft silver radiance. "The Codex Arcanum," Hermione whispered from below. "Or at least, Ravenclaw's portion of it." Harry reached for the case, but as his fingers neared it, words appeared in the air before him: "Knowledge seeks balance. 1/4 reveals nothing. All 4 together reveal everything. So we need all 4 pieces," Ron said. "Makes sense." Harry carefully lifted the crystal case. It was lighter than it looked, and the book within pulsed gently with magic that felt both ancient and alive. As he descended the book staircase, the volumes rearranged themselves back onto shelves. He placed the case on a reading table, and they all gathered around. "The cover's in some kind of code," Hermione observed, peering at the shifting patterns of light. "It's not any language I recognize." "Founder script," Flitwick said excitedly. "A precursor to modern runes. Each founder developed their own variation." "Can you read it?" McGonagall asked. "With time, perhaps. But look, there are 3 empty spaces on the cover. For the other 3 portions. So when we have all 4, they'll combine," Harry realized. "And probably become readable." Snape, who had been unusually quiet, spoke suddenly. "We are not alone." They all froze. Snape's wand was pointed at a shadowed corner of the library where the floating books hadn't ventured. "Show yourself," Snape commanded. The shadows coalesced into a human form, a woman with dark hair and piercing eyes, wearing robes that seemed woven from night itself. Harry recognized her immediately from the Department of Mysteries battle last year. "Unspeakable Croaker," McGonagall said, her wand coming up. "What are you doing here?" "Following a trail of unauthorized magic," the Unspeakable replied calmly. "And it seems I've found quite a lot of it." Her eyes swept over the library, the Codex fragment, the students and professors. "Founder sanctuaries. I suspected they existed, but proof has been elusive." "You work with Cassius Blackthorn," Harry accused. "Worked," Croaker corrected. Past tense. "His methods have become extreme. The Department of Mysteries seeks understanding, not destruction." "Then why are you here?" Flitwick asked, his wand also raised. "To ensure the Codex doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And to offer my assistance." Croaker's gaze fixed on Harry. "You've done what generations of Unspeakables have failed to do, located multiple founder sanctuaries. With my help, you could find the remaining 2 and secure the complete Codex. Why should we trust you?" Ron demanded. "You shouldn't," Croaker said frankly. "But you need someone who understands ministry protocols, who can navigate the bureaucracy, who can provide cover for your activities. Cassius has convinced certain factions that founder knowledge must be destroyed. I represent the faction that believes it must be understood." McGonagall and the other professors exchanged looks. "The Department of Mysteries is divided on this issue?" "Deeply," Croaker confirmed. "Some believe all founder artifacts should be confiscated and studied in isolation. Others believe they should be destroyed. A minority, myself included, believe they should be integrated into magical education, carefully, gradually, with proper safeguards." "That's what we want too," Hermione said. "Not to hoard the knowledge or use it for power, but to learn from it and share it responsibly." "Then we have common cause," Croaker said. "But time is short. Cassius has allies in the ministry who are pushing for immediate action. They want to raid Hogwarts, confiscate any founder artifacts, and obliviate anyone who's seen them. They can't do that. Ron protested. They can and will, Croaker said grimly. Under educational emergency provisions. All they need is approval from the minister, and with the current climate of fear about the Dark Lord's return. She's right, Snape said quietly. Fudge is desperate to appear in control. If Cassius Blackthorne convinces him that founder knowledge threatens that control, then we need to secure the remaining sanctuaries first, Harry concluded. Tonight. Impossible, McGonagall said. Gryffindor's crucible could be anywhere on the 7th floor. Finding it could take hours, and we've already pushed our luck tonight. Actually, Croaker said, I may be able to help with that. The department has been mapping magical concentrations in Hogwarts for years. We've identified several likely locations for founder magic on the 7th floor. She withdrew a parchment from her robes and spread it on the table beside the codex fragment. It showed a detailed map of Hogwarts' 7th floor with several areas marked in glowing ink. These are points of concentrated ancient magic, Croaker explained. Most correspond to known historical locations, portraits of early headmasters, memorials to notable alumni. But this one. She pointed to an area near the North Tower. This concentration is different. It's not a single point but a pattern, a circle within a square within a triangle. Founder symbolism. The crucible, Hermione breathed. It has to be. Then let's go, Harry said, carefully securing the codex fragment in its crystal case. One moment, Croaker said. If we're doing this, we need to do it properly. The 7th floor is patrolled by both school prefects and ministry agents Umbridge has recruited. We'll need diversion and stealth. I can create a diversion, Flitwick offered. A minor magical disturbance in the East Wing that will draw attention away from the North Tower. And I can ensure our path remains clear, Snape said. I know the patrol schedules. McGonagall looked at each of them in turn, then nodded. Very well. But at the first sign of serious trouble, we abort. Understood? They all agreed. Croaker led the proceed directly into the next chapter. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.